You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Joe Chadwick, Fred, welcome back again. We have Sharon down as Anna Hutner, which I can change that if you like me to. And we have Massimo is here as well.
Okay.
And Marcy.
Yes, please change that, Harry. Thank you.
Okay.
And Joe Vayuzo is also here.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay, we'll run through the roster, but it looks like all the commission members are here.
Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Recording in progress.
We'll call this meeting of the Branford Planning and Zoning Commission to order. It is 7:02 p.m. on Thursday, May 4th, 2023. And I'll introduce members and staff of our commission. For commission members, Joe Chadwick. Joe Chadwick, are you here?
Joe Chadwick is here. Is my sound okay?
Yes, Joe, you sound
Thank you.
great. So Joe Chadwick is here. Fred Russo. Fred, are you here?
Fred Russo, present.
Thank you, Fred. Joe Vayuzo. Joe, are you here?
Vayuzo here.
Joe is here. Great. Marcy Pelusi. Marcy, you here?
Marcy's here.
Thank you, Marcy. Massimo Liguri. Massimo, are you here?
Massimo's here.
Thank you, Massimo. And Sharon Hutner. Sharon, are you here?
Sharon is here.
Thank you, Sharon. I am Chuck Anders, Chair. Our staff this evening is our town planner, Harry Smith. Harry, are you here?
I am here.
Our assistant planner, Evan Brynan. And Evan, looks like you're here.
Here.
And lurking in the background somewhere, our clerk recording secretary is Michelle Martin. We'll follow our normal format for public hearings, which is that the applicant goes first. And we'll have some instructions about how to participate in the Zoom process, even as an applicant or as a member of the public. After the applicant goes, we allow the public to comment. You state your name for the record, please, and make your comments. When the public is done, we allow the applicant to respond to public comments. We may or may not complete the public hearings. And before we ask Evan to give the instructions about participation, I will ask Fred to read the notice of public hearing.
Legal notice, Town of Branford. The Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Branford, Connecticut hereby gives notice of public hearings to be held on Thursday, May 4th, 2023 at 8 p.m. by remote technology to consider the applications listed below. Information regarding how to participate in the public hearings will be provided on the Commission's meeting agenda that will be posted on the town's website at least 24 hours prior to the meeting. Number 1, application number 23-3.9, special exception for an oversized accessory structure located at 11 Rextile Road, Kate Wilbert and Raphael Pelli, applicants and owner. At said hearings, all persons will have the right to be heard. Copies are on file in the Planning and Zoning Commission's office at the Planning and Zoning Department at 1019 Main Street, Branford, Connecticut, 06405. Written communications may be sent to the above address or to planning and zoning at branford-ct-gov. Branford Planning and Zoning Commission, C. Andrews, chairperson.
Chuck Anderson, thank you, Fred. Evan, can you review the process for participating in the public hearing?
Sure. So if you'd like to participate, down at the bottom of your screen, there's a reactions button. You can select that and it gives you further options. You can further select raise hand if you'd like to speak. We ask that everybody please state their name at the beginning of their comment or question. If you're dialing in by phone, you can press *9. And again, please state your name at the beginning of your comment or question.
Chuck Anderson here. Thank you, Evan. Before we start with the McDonald's, which is our first continued public hearing, did we ever hear from our guy from Beta? Have we seen evidence of him showing up?
No, I'm going to give him one more call right now.
Okay. Maybe we'll give you a moment to do that. Just make sure.
If you want, Mr. Chairman, I could start with some background.
Yeah. Why don't we just give him a minute, and if I don't hear anything in a minute, then when he checks back in, we'll go ahead and start whether he's here or not. But it's just so everyone's here, and I don't want anyone claiming, oh, I didn't hear it. So
sure.
It looks like Dennis has joined us, Harry.
Great.
Okay, so everyone's here. Great, we can get started. Representative from McDonald's, you can proceed.
Terrific. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. For the applicant, Keith Brown from law firm of Brown, Altman, DeLeo, 538 Broad Hollow Road, Suite 301 West, Melville, New York, 11747. I'm here tonight for a McDonald's special exception modification application to replace the single drive-through lane with a side-by-side drive-through, as well as to make associated on-site pedestrian improvements. I'd like to thank the board for hearing the application as well as planning staff's assistance. With me tonight are the following experts who are available to answer questions. We have Mr. Jeffrey Fitzgerald from Bowler, the project civil engineer, Paul Going, PE from Atlantic Traffic and Design, our traffic engineer, and Jefferson Murphy, AICP, our project planning consultant. As a matter of housekeeping, we last appeared before this board on March 2nd of 2023, where we discussed the existing drive-through queuing lanes associated with the single lane drive-through at the property and how this application, which will add a second ordering point, will improve the efficiency and queuing capacity of the drive-through. In addition, at that March 2nd, 2023, we presented expert testimony from Jeffrey Fitzgerald, Ethan Shikoski, as well as Jefferson Murphy. We asked that the minutes and testimony from the March 2nd, 2023 hearing be incorporated to this evening's record. We note that prior to the March hearing, our office submitted the following exhibits dated February 7th of 2023, all prepared by Bowler. An existing drive-through stacking exhibit, the proposed stacking with intersection exhibit, and a color site plan rendering. Our project experts may display the exhibits during the course of the presentation. Since the March 2nd hearing, we note that the applicant has revised the site plan based on input from this board, planning staff, and comments received from the abutting property owner. We note bollards have been added to the northern side of the drive aisle between the existing curbing and wall. The proposed mobile order stalls have been relocated to a different area in the easterly parking area. We also note that the project traffic engineer has provided additional traffic data and submitted an updated traffic report on March 20th of 23 and again on April 18th of 2023 in response to the comments from the town's outside traffic consultant, Beta Group. Paul Going, our traffic engineer, will briefly discuss the traffic data provided and answer any questions. As previously discussed at the March 2nd meeting, the property has been improved with the McDonald's restaurant for approximately 53 years. The restaurant was improved with a single order point drive-through since circa 1980. As was noted by Atlantic Traffic and substantiated by the Beta Group in the February 23rd of 2023 memorandum, and from comments made by Massimo Ligori during the March 2nd meeting, the existing drive-through has a queuing problem as vehicles regularly extend onto West Main Street. The February 9th, 2023 site visit conducted by Beta Engineering observed a maximum queue length of 13 vehicles and extended back to West Main Street at 12:10 p.m. These results are comparable to the queuing results recorded by the applicant's traffic engineer in the July 2022 traffic impact study. That's from the Beta memo, page 2, paragraph 10. This is an ongoing safety issue that McDonald's seeks to address through this application. Simply allowing the existing conditions to remain is not a solution. The application will add a second ordering point, which will improve the speed, efficiency, and overall capacity of the drive-thru. By taking two orders at the same time, McDonald's can serve its existing customer base more efficiently while handling larger orders. Most importantly, it expands the overall queuing capacity and decreases the likelihood of the drive-thru from extending onto Main Street. As will be further explained by Mr. Paul Going, McDonald's has similar drive-thru improvements by adding second ordering points throughout the country. Examples of sites in Connecticut and New York have been included in Atlantic Traffic's letter report. For the record, the existing single lane drive-thru with its single ordering point can accommodate 12 vehicles measured from the pickup window before potentially impacting site circulation or parking. Approximately 14 vehicles can be in the drive-thru lane before extending onto Main Street. In comparison, the redesigned drive-thru with two ordering points can accommodate 16 vehicles measured from the pickup window before potentially impacting site circulation or parking. This is a 4-vehicle improvement. Importantly, the redesigned drive-thru can accommodate 20 vehicles in the drive-thru lane before extending onto Main Street, an improvement of approximately 6 vehicles. We note that there had been a side-by-side drive-thru in place at the time of the Beta Engineering site visit. The 13-vehicle queue would have been contained on site and would not have extended onto West Main Street. The purpose of this application is to add a side-by-side drive-thru, which will improve the ordering process and overall efficiency of the restaurant. The applicant will also be making associated on-site pedestrian improvements, which includes adding 2 pedestrian crossing stripes and striped crosswalk to alert motorists and direct pedestrians. In addition, a raised median and additional striping will be added to decrease the total distance from the parking area to the restaurant from 32 to 21 feet. As we know, this was a concern that the board had when it considered the last application. As provided in Atlantic Traffic's expert report, this will reduce the walking time for pedestrians crossing the drive-thru lanes from 9.14 seconds to 6 seconds, a reduction of approximately 34% or 3.14 seconds. Excuse me. As was discussed at the prior hearing, with regard to the required queuing spaces, Town Code Section 7.15A1 states, quote, minimum queuing spaces 6 for the first window or station with 2 additional spaces for each additional window or station. Although the town code is silent on where the queue should be measured from, the town planning staff report elected to measure the queue from the order station and concluded that a side-by-side drive-through requires a 12-car queue from the first order board, 6 from the first menu board, 2 from the second menu board, 2 for the pay window, and 2 for the pickup window. When measured from the first order board, the side-by-side drive-through has a capacity for 9 vehicles. First, we submit that this is arbitrary and capricious as the town code does not impose this requirement. In such case, any ambiguity must be resolved in favor of the applicant. As such, the application far exceeds the 12-vehicle queue length when measured from the pickup window. And second, focusing on the starting point of where to measure the drive-through, whether from the pickup window or order point, fails to take into account the ongoing safety issues with the drive-through. The drive-through layout can accommodate 20 vehicles on site before the queue extends onto Main Street. This is an improvement of 6 vehicles and offers a feasible solution to this ongoing So with that, I'd like to call our first witness, Mr. Paul Going of Land Traffic and Design, who will discuss the existing single lane drive-through, the side-by-side drive-through, as well as the traffic letter report. Paul?
Thank you. Do I need to be sworn?
No.
All right. So my name's Paul Going. I work for Atlantic Traffic and Design Engineering. We're located in Melville, New York. We prepared a report for this project, and we recently revised it with a revision date of April 17. So can I share my screen?
Yes, you can do that.
Thank you. So one thing I wanted to do is just focus on the queuing. This is the exhibit that Keith referred to earlier, stacking with intersection. This is an exhibit with an aerial background. It's got the existing McDonald's shown, and it's got the proposed drive-through overwritten in black on top of the aerial. So in this proposed condition, the 16 vehicles that Keith was referring to was coming back to this point here. So the 19 vehicles is coming back to the property line essentially, and additional vehicles beyond that would first be in the driveway and then go out onto Route 1 or West Main Street. When we look at the existing condition, that same 19 vehicle queue would actually extend well onto Main Street. So the side-by-side, importantly, queues up 2 lanes over a portion of its length, and therefore queues more vehicles on site in a more compact space. The real advantage of the side-by-side, however, is because it allows 2 orders to be taken at once. We did a lot of data collection. We analyzed the data. Beta has looked at the data, come to some different conclusions. But really what it comes down to is that when there's somebody in the drive-through who either can't decide what they want, or they're a mom or dad with a bunch of kids in the van, and it takes a long time for them to make that order, the whole drive-through is shut down until that order is taken. With the side-by-side drive-through, one menu board can continue to process orders while the other menu board is kind of stationary with one customer making a longer, complicated order. Looking at the average rates and those sort of calculations don't really bring it down to that level, that where when you're on the ground, where that drive-through breaks down is when it stops, right? McDonald's does everything they can to keep the drive-through going. You've probably noticed newer McDonald's have larger kitchens, smaller dining rooms. A lot of the demand for McDonald's is now in the drive-through. This site is about 80% drive-through, right? That's even high for McDonald's. We typically see 70, 75%. So McDonald's, I think probably 10 to 15 years ago, they started putting in double drive-throughs. They started with what they call the tandem drive-through, which is one order point following the other, so in a line. And that helped because they could take 2 orders at once. But it didn't help when one of those order points had somebody who was taking a long time to make that order. The side-by-side drive-through addresses that, and that helps keep the queue moving. This particular restaurant, the kitchen has already been optimized to deliver the food as efficiently and as quickly as possible. And really the only additional step that McDonald's can take to address the queuing is to put in the side-by-side drive-through. That's why we're requesting that approval from this board in order to have a safer situation.
Chuck Anderson, thank you, Mr. Going. Is that it? Do you have any additional comments you'd like to make at this time?
Just if there are any questions, I'm happy to discuss.
Okay. I'll ask. I want to hear from our independent guy if he's around. But my quick recollection of I'll give you the benefit of what I'm thinking about is that the issue where you measure them from. I thought the choke point was the ordering point, so that what you're looking at in terms of the stacking is the vehicles from the the ordering point. And that I think under existing conditions, I know you were looking at the pickup point, but I think it's this is just me, that you can look, if the choke point is the ordering point, that's what you look from. In the existing one, if you count it there, it looks like, that shows the double. It shows that you can get 8 vehicles if you count back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 until you get to where the street line is. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So for that, and with the double, even though it's moved closer, you can get 9. That's what I counted, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so I thought your argument was this is an existing non-conforming area, and we're making it better because by doing this, even though we're moving the choke point up by allowing the second one, it's better because you can get 9 versus 8.
Well,
that was one of your points, I thought. And I understand the additional point you're making is that what if the person's taken a long time, the second one allows. That's the additional point I think you made this evening as well. But even that, the 8 to 9 is an improvement because you could do that. And then I thought the question our expert asked was, well, okay, that makes sense. But does obviously the protocol is to have them all in the back. If you had the space, we wouldn't be here. Because and every other one we've seen has had them in the back, and so this isn't an issue. But because of the configuration of the property, because you got this little carve out there, unfortunately, there's a house there, you can't do it, so you got to move it up. So we understand that, and the question and your argument is, well, it still makes it better, even though we have to move it up. And you can argue that it increased the queue length from 8 to 9, and it provides the additional, if they're stalling. And then I thought the question our expert asked, okay, that makes sense, but is there somehow an increase in demand when you move them up, when you import the double ones? And give me some data to support that. And that's what I did. That's what I thought he was looking for. Anyway, that's just to address my concerns. That's what's in my head. So that if that makes any, you tell me what I'm missing. And
from my point of view as an engineer, as a traffic engineer, the requirement in your code, it's kind of backwards. You need more queuing when you have a greater number of service points, but the greater number of service points actually serves the customers more efficiently and keeps processing them. So I do agree that currently you can store 8 from the existing menu board to the property line, and in the proposed condition we can store 9, and that's an increase, which is certainly positive. But whether the code requires it to be measured from that order point, or requires it, or would allow it to be measured from the pickup point, it's kind of a matter of semantics. And I know it's important, but when we study McDonald's, and I've studied, over 100 McDonald's, we always measured those queues from the pickup point. So that's the way we think of it. When we talk about the order point the ordering point as being the choke point. It's the choke point in the condition when you only have one lane. The purpose of the two lanes is to alleviate that bottleneck and allow the second lane to process vehicles, plus process customers while this first one is busy.
So you would be saying that it would, if you have two, it would no longer be a choke point?
So McDonald's does everything they can to control all parts of this process, right? They have the kitchen, they have the staffing, they have the order, the menu boards themselves. They have the equipment to take payment and do everything in a very efficient way. The part they don't control is that customer. So that continues to be sort of the choke point, but your code doesn't define the queuing based on the choke point. But the purpose of the second lane is to alleviate the choke. Now, right, because you might be thinking to yourself, well, what if there are two people making a longer, complicated order at the same time? And yes, that can happen. And then, you do get queuing and you can get a backup, but the likelihood of that is less than the likelihood of one person making a large and complicated order. So McDonald's,
can I just add
this?
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to give you the benefit of my thought process, but the applicant can proceed however you like.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, and I just wanted to add that with respect to the ordering point, McDonald's also has been making strides to making mobile ordering more part of their business model so that they can get more efficiency of people who can now just mobile order on their phone and go through the drive-through and go straight to the pickup, or they could even go to the 3 selected mobile ordering pickup locations that have been put on the site plan. But I think I would like Paul to expand upon the third point that you brought up, which is the demand aspect, because we spent a lot of time working on that and responding to comments by your outside consultant. So Paul, if you could.
Well, we did obtain data from McDonald's. We saw, based on other locations where we had data from before before side-by-side was implemented to after a side-by-side, we saw about an average of 20% increase in that drive-through usage. So some of those customers, in some cases, if you have a McDonald's and you have queues that go back out onto the highway, there are some customers who will get in that queue and just wait because that's what they want to do, and they want to make that order. Other customers will drive by and go to a different location. There are McDonald's in many convenient locations, so you could, continue on your trip and just go to a different location. So in some cases, you'll have some unmet demand, and when you put in the side-by-side, you'll pick up some additional orders because those people who bypass the site because it seems too busy may now come into the site and be processed at the site. So we do see based on the data McDonald's provided, we do see some increase in total orders based on the side-by-side.
And do you think that's attributed to having a double order that increases the demand, or do you think it's just coincidence?
I think that you have some people who feel that it's less busy, it's more convenient, right? The purpose of the side-by-side is a couple of things. One is safety, right? Especially when you have a location that's where you have a queuing problem. The other is customer satisfaction. We implement the side-by-side at a lot of McDonald's, including sites that have no queuing problem. But the customer satisfaction is higher when they can get through the drive-through in a shorter period of time.
And I think that's attributed to the fact that everybody knows that the way the setup is at a McDonald's, it's that it's more efficient to go through the drive-through lane than to park your car, walk in, order, and get your food. I think that's pretty much common knowledge.
Sure. When I reviewed the reports, the question I had is because a lot of these were installed around COVID time and people just weren't going inside restaurants at all. So
That's
that may have, so part of the increase in the drive-through just may have been coincidental because of the health situation, not necessarily the fact that you had two side-by-sides, but simply because that seemed to be what it was.
Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead, Paul. And I just want to add to at the end.
So COVID things were kind of crazy for a while. A lot of restaurants had no dining room. Everything was through the drive-through. A lot of people relied on those drive-throughs during COVID, and a lot of people, I think, continue to want to use the drive-through. So, there's been a trend. I'd say 15 years ago, you had 50 to 60% of a McDonald's business through the drive-through. Today, it's 70 to 75. This particular location is 80. So there's been a trend towards that. McDonald's, with the side-by-side drive-through, the mobile ordering, the newer kitchens that they have, they're doing what they can on every point of the process to efficiently process those orders and get customers through without a long wait.
If this site is already at 80, do you expect it's going to go higher if you put a double in?
I wouldn't expect that. I wouldn't expect that, but it's possible. I mean, I said, I've seen many drive-throughs. I've studied many drive-throughs. I've studied drive-throughs that process more than 2 customers per minute. So one wouldn't think that number could get through. But there are some locations that just operate a little differently than others, and whether it's the customers who are more familiar with the site and know what their orders are going to be, I don't know. But you see a lot of variation. I would only expect the queuing to be better under the proposed condition, regardless of whether there's more demand. There's certainly going to be more capacity to deal with that demand. Aside from the side-by-side, I just wanted to point out that aside from the physical infrastructure, McDonald's chooses how many employees are going to staff the restaurant. They increase the staffing during the busier times. Restaurants that are busier have more employees. The physical drive-through isn't the only factor in what creates demand at a McDonald's and how McDonald's deals with that demand. So if you look at some of the data we collected, we had sites with processing fewer orders that had the same queue length or longer queues than sites processing many more orders. And, it's not because they don't know how to make burgers. It's because at a site that doesn't have as much demand, they don't have as much staff either to work in that restaurant.
Thank you. Does the applicant have further information like to present?
I would just like to ask Jefferson Murphy, our planning expert, if he has anything he'd like to add.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? Jefferson Murphy, Sag Harbor, New York. I am a land use planner for over 40 years. And the first thing that comes to mind with this application, and as a former municipal planner, our number one job, and I've instilled that in all my staff I've supervised over the years, is our number one job is public safety. And that's why we're here tonight. And that's why McDonald's is making this application. Because obviously there's an existing queuing problem. I don't think anybody, I think everybody agrees to that. And we're here to try to fix that. And it's a two-step process. One is obviously the physical improvements outside the building. And then the second part that goes hand in hand with it is, and I think we testified to this already, but I think it's important to remind everyone, it's the interior efficiency of what's going on inside the building by the McDonald's staff that adds to that efficiency of processing the orders. And we do have a building permit for those improvements. And I believe, I might be mistaken, but I believe those improvements have already been made. But we obviously need the second ordering point to fully implement the enhancement of the queuing. At the last hearing, I testified as to reviewing your planning staff report, and he cited other Connecticut municipalities, and in reviewing those, in each of those different codes, they have one thing that's in common, and that gives latitude to the Planning Commission on how to calculate and where to calculate the queuing. And also was referred to was American Planning Association report called Planning Advisory Service. It was a technical bulletin, and he cited a reference to a Savannah, Georgia parking. And I mentioned that this parking study was over 20 years old, and that Savannah, Georgia had updated its code since then. And in fact, their current code, and this is important to reference, is that for drive-through restaurants, they have a maximum length of 160 feet queuing capacity measured from the pickup window. So one thing that's common thread to both Connecticut and Georgia is there seems to be some discussion about where and how to make this calculation. Since the last meeting, I know that one of the questions that was asked was that we evaluate other McDonald's. And I live 5 miles away from the closest McDonald's in Southampton Village. For those who don't know Southampton Village, it's a summer resort community, has a very large dynamic summer population. Population quadruples in size. They had a queuing problem with cars backing out onto the road, such as you do. And taking a look at their traffic report, it was also our traffic report by Atlantic, same traffic engineer. I just want to read this one section of the traffic report very briefly. The side-by-side drive-through will process customers more efficiently and therefore reduce queue lengths. The side-by-side configuration also accommodates a longer queue in a more compact space. The proposed configuration can accommodate 19 vehicles before impacting pedestrian or vehicular circulation on North Sea Road, and therefore it's a significant improvement over the existing condition in which only 15 vehicles are accommodated. So it's a very similar situation to what we're facing here. And Keith Brown was the attorney for that application. I'm sure he can attest how thorough their planning review process was, and they eventually got their approval. So I think you've seen municipalities have this debate, such as we're having tonight. In the end, though, I think the one thing that we can all agree is where you measure it from, the number of cars that can be accommodated on the property will be increased. And that's a public safety improvement. I think it's a significant one. And again, it goes hand in hand with processing the orders. We can't fully implement the efficiency of getting these orders processed without adding the second drive-through ordering point. So I just would be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Doc Massimo here. May I ask a question, please?
Absolutely, Massimo.
Yeah. So I'm really, really understanding this whole process, and it looks really good, and it seems a lot safer, to me with your explanations and everything. What I'm wondering is there any plan of action, any alternative plan of emergency? Let's just say during peak hours, that one of the ordering stations is out of order. Or somebody that was supposed to be working that window calls out sick or gets sick. Is there any type of, because then we go back down to now only having 5 cars. And like I said, I love it when it seems like if it runs smoothly, it's a great idea in my eyes. But if something happens, I don't know. Now we only have 5 cars, and we may have a problem, a much bigger problem with the queuing of the cars backing up into the street. I was just wondering if there's any emergency alternative plan to that.
So I'm going to defer to either Jeff Fitzgerald or Paul Going on that note.
Thank you.
What I would say, well, I don't see Jeff, but what I would say is that obviously the side-by-side operates better if one of those channels was down, or if there's some other problem with the restaurant. There are things you could do. One thing you could do right now, this is a 3-point system, right? You order at one point, you pay at one point, you pick up at the other point. You could stop taking the orders at the menu board, and you could take the orders face to face at the pay window, and then you'd have a lot more queuing from that pay window back to West Main Street. I don't think that would work better, but you could increase that number if you needed to. I don't think that would work better. Having the order point. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to jump in response to the question that was asked. One important thing to note is that it's not a question of if one person taking orders calls out sick, because you have 2 ordering stations, but there's one person typically taking orders from both stations. It just staggers. It just basically just allows more cars to be safely stacked in line, and the orders are taken one at a time. It's not like 2 people are taking orders, and that's why you don't have a situation where 2 cars don't finish their order at the same time and then merge together. They're staggered. So you will, there's not that concern over one person, one order taker not showing up to work or something like that.
And just, people are trained on multiple stations at a McDonald's, obviously.
Okay. So the order would be like if something did happen, one of these kiosks, the ordering can be taken at the pay window, and that would alleviate some of the pressure of the stacking of the cars.
At the same speed. The orders are always going to be taken at the same speed. There's only one person taking the order. It just gives you, this configuration allows you to stack more cars in a tight area.
Correct. Okay. Thank you.
I assume you said one person taking the order. Wouldn't it be 2 if you have 2 stations?
No, it's one person taking the order at both stations. They do it one at a time. That's why if you pull up to a station, sometimes they say, please hold.
Hey, Jeff, I'm sorry to contradict you today, because we were Ethan and I were talking about this. I reached out to Charlie Miller from McDonald's, and he did say that 2 people take orders at the same time.
I stand corrected.
I think what happens is when you're outside of peak hours, it is definitely one person. If you go to McDonald's late at night, it's just one person. But when they're busiest, they have 2 people taking orders.
The other thing is that the managers do step in and fill, if there's somebody out and they don't have a replacement, the managers typically do respond and fill in that vacancy so that there is not a delay. Last thing McDonald's wants is any delay of the processing of the orders. That's goes against their business model.
Yeah, I think my bigger concern was if one of those ordering stations were down due to a malfunction or it breaking down, how would the car stack up? So I'm sure you guys have it covered with the employees and the management and stuff like that. I totally get that. I was just wondering, like, what would happen? Will we still order from the ordering window and then the stacking starts there and goes out into the street? Or, which he answered the question for me. He said you would push the cars forward and you would order from the bay window, pretty much. Correct?
Thanks, Massimo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does the applicant have anything further at this time?
Sorry, I was muted. No, sir.
Great. Maybe I know commission members have questions, but maybe we can hear from our expert. Is he available? Sorry, Harry or Evan?
Yes, Dennis is here.
He is, yes. Just making sure you were referring to me when you had mentioned that.
Yes,
Dennis Flynn with Beta Group. First of all, my apologies for being a bit late there and holding everybody up. I was dealing with a little bit of technical glitches here on my end, so I do apologize for that. And the one, really, I guess there's one kind of main point that I would like to make, and it's related to the latest traffic letter report that was issued, dated April 17th. And certainly we can discuss other things if needed, but I just want to touch on this or get into this. So in this report, there is an equation that is included. It's on page 7 that is used to kind of come up with an expected a projected queue from the order point based on really looking at data from that was observed and collected from nearby or similar sites. And our concern with the equation that was used is it would indicate that as the number of transactions per hour increase, the queue would be expected to decrease. And it certainly feels that would be counterintuitive. Certainly when you look at the other data that was provided at other sites, it just showed this equation or this metric that was included would indicate that, as you continue to increase number of transactions, just based on the, like I said, the calculation they developed, that the queue would decrease, and that just doesn't seem doesn't seem appropriate, or like I said, it seems counterintuitive. And really, based on that and the other information provided, what really this comes down to, it is very difficult. We certainly understand it's difficult to really kind of quantify with a high degree of accuracy of what the expected queue would be from total queue or from the order point. So really our main sort of recommendation or comment at the end of all this is we would advise that McDonald's have a sort of mitigation strategy in place with this new setup. Possibly something they could even consider doing right now to help sort of offset any impacts to the roadway if the queue does appear to extend, that they have some sort of mitigation strategy or something in place that they could intervene. I know, taking staff off of certain points is an inconvenience and difficult, but just in a way to really minimize or eliminate, if at all possible, the effects of queuing potentially onto the main street. So that's really certainly there's maybe some other things we can get into, but that was really our main concern. And if there was any way, or if they would like the applicant would like to address that comment, certainly like to hear from them.
Chuck in, sure. Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Does the applicant want to address that? That's I think a good question. What if in fact you do everything right and it's going out into the street? What sort of measures could you take? Has this come up?
Paul Going, are you familiar with any mitigation plans we've done elsewhere?
I mean, the main thing they do is install a side-by-side drive-through. I know that it's having the proper staffing, having the manager on hand to help having all hands on deck is really what they do. They do with this drive-through system. They have cameras. They have cameras because they take a little picture of the front of your car so that when you come to make your payment or pick up your order, they see that and they can, make a double check as well as asking you if did you order the McChicken or whatever. But they also have in their camera system, they can see the queues and see when the cars are backing up and make adjustments inside accordingly.
Well, I know one thing that they certainly do is when they do have a large order or a complex order, or when they're just having trouble getting the orders out to people, what they'll indicate is they'll instruct people once they pay to park in one of the parking stalls that's on the west side of the lot, and then they have runners who actually will run the food out to the individual because they've already paid. Now they're just waiting, and it allows for more people to get through, so it keeps the bottleneck from clogging up the whole system. The other thing too that I want to add is the changes in the kitchen itself, the efficiencies that they built into it really allows. That's one of the main reasons why they've been doing the renovations that they have, is because they've aligned the kitchen in such a way that the equipment, they figured out the way to maximize the efficiency by making modifications in the way that the equipment is laid out. So I think that's an important feature too. And then the third, I would say the other mitigation that they've been doing is they're really pushing hard on the mobile ordering. I mean, I frequent McDonald's, probably once or twice a week, and I travel all over the state. And no matter what McDonald's I go anywhere in the state, the first question they ask you is, would you like to take advantage of the mobile app today? So.
Yeah, I thought you mentioned there's a place in this site where they're going to do it. And is there a parking area or something? Is that something you can show me on the site plan?
Yeah.
The plan.
Do you want to bring it up, Paul, and show them? It's the first couple of stalls right on the west side of the lot.
Yeah. Excuse me. This is Harry Smith, town planner. I just want to interrupt. There's been a lot of discussion back and forth, and I can recognize from the screen because it highlights most of the people speaking. But if people could identify themselves for the benefit of our recording secretary in the record when you start speaking, even if it's repetitive, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Check in, Chair. Sorry, Harry.
Wasn't aimed at you necessarily. We recognize your voice, Chuck.
That was Keith Brown talking. I had my video off because I'm sitting in my car.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Not a problem. Paul, you want to point those out?
Yeah. So this is all going from Atlantic Traffic. So where you have these heavy white lines painted on the pavement.
We're just seeing you, Paul, excuse me, and not your screen at the moment.
Okay, hold on a second. Let me try again. There we go.
Okay. Yes, we see your screen now.
So these spaces over here. So if you're like me, I go through and I order a quarter pounder without cheese, and they generally make them with cheese. So when I pull up to the pickup window, a lot of times they'll tell me, "Oh, can you pull over there a second because we're making that special for you." So that's these stalls over here.
Harry Smith, town planner, let me just follow up quickly with another scenario based more on the queues before the ordering points. I mean, let's say, for example, someone's car stalls out while they're in one of the side-by-side ordering points after this is approved, should it be approved. That takes you back to the situation that it currently exists on site with a change that instead of the ordering point being to the rear of the building, now it's much closer to the entrance drive on West Main Street. And depending on how long it takes to resolve the situation with that stalled out car or whatever the situation might be, it seems like there's a potential for, I think this is Massimo's question as well, for the queue to back up potentially into the highway. And what would be the strategy there? Because you can't, what would you be doing at that kind of situation?
What you could do again, rather than taking the orders at the menu board, you could take the orders at the cash window and take the payment at that window as well, to increase the distance between that point and our roadway.
Okay. Is that in some kind of policy statement, or how is that just left up to the manager, in charge at the situation? How does that work?
Yeah, it would be the manager on duty who would be making that kind of a decision.
Okay, so it's not necessarily a given that is what he would or she would do, possibly.
No, because they may have other strategies that they can use to deal with that situation. It would be an unusual situation.
Well, and granted, yeah,
but it's possible. Yeah,
it's possible, right?
I mean, it's possible on any roadway that you have somebody breaking down. I mean, most likely what they do is send some employees over there to push it out of the way,
Sure.
Which could be, handled in
right.
5 minutes or something.
Chuck Anders here, just on the mobile, I'll be done with this, but can I order something right now? Because there's, I don't live far from this, and go pull into the pull-up thing and then just notify someone I'm here to pick up my stuff? Can I avoid the drive-through line at all? That's a question. Or do you still have to go through the drive-through line when you, so you avoid the drive-through line at all, altogether then?
You could avoid it altogether.
Okay. So that is a way of, someone could.
If I could address that.
Right.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Jefferson Murphy again. Again, we're looking at, from a planner's point of view, the demographics of the customer base, and I would never ever use a mobile app. I'm not into that. I'd rather go and sit down, order face to face from a person at the counter. That's old school. My daughter, who's 18 years old, would never ever go for that. She's with her friends. They're on their mobile app. They order the food before, they're 3 miles away from the restaurant. By the time they get there, they pull into their designated parking spot. They're given a number, and then they type in the number, and they bring out the food, and they go off on their way. So it's very efficient, and that's really targeted for the younger demographics, much younger than me.
Check it, Chair. Thank you. Does our Mr. Flynn, is there anything else you'd like to? I have your written comments. Is there anything else you'd like to highlight at this time?
That was really. Yes, sorry, just checking, make sure my mute was off there. Sorry about that. No, that was the main, really the main concern we had was really just kind of going back to that estimation on the queue. We did have some questions about where some of the data provided came from. It wasn't anything what I regard as really critical, just more for consistency and understanding purposes. But just simply the sort of the calculation there to estimate what this site, the estimated, the queue for this site from the order point. Again, understanding that they use data from nearby or adjacent sites or similar sites, just was a question for us as to why the equation you use would indicate that number of transactions, the larger the number of transactions, the higher the number of transactions would result in the queue would decrease, which again, I just feel like that's a counterintuitive statement, and I think it would be good to sort of understand or address, where that is coming from.
Paul Going from Atlantic Traffic again.
Yes.
This is, I think, the figure in question. This is the data we had from 2 different locations, 4 different times a day. At each location, and the line you see, the kind of dotted line going through there, that's a linear regression based on those data points, and it does show it's sloping downward as you go to the right. That as you have more orders, you have a smaller queue. The data seems counterintuitive, but when you look at the individual data points, you had queues ranging from 4 to 8. The highest number of transactions resulted in a 5-car queue. And why is that? It's because at a busy location, McDonald's staffs the restaurant and they operate a little bit differently to deal with what that particular restaurant's needs are. So, this is not like stormwater where it's, water and gravity and you can calculate what, where that water's going to be and how fast it's going to flow. It's a system where what's coming into the system, people driving in off the street is somewhat randomized. It's busier during lunch. It's not as busy at 10 p.m. The inner workings of the restaurant, the capacity to prepare and serve meals is also variable. And that's something that McDonald's has some control over. So when they have a restaurant that's doing 90 orders versus 50 orders, the queue is only 1 car more. That's because they're doing things differently within the restaurant.
Well, can you also talk about the total queue chart that you prepared?
Total queue chart. This is based on the total queue. So this was the queue from the order point. Well, it says it right up there. The total queue chart made some more sense, right? This is again a linear regression, just mathematically based on the data for what the total queue was from the pickup window to the tail of queue. So here things ranged up to 14. You had 12 or 14 at the restaurant doing 90, right? You had 60, 65, which had a queue of 12. There is some variation. It's not a linear relationship between the length of queue and the number of orders or the size of the restaurant, or it's not, you can't assume that it's going to be a linear relationship between those things. So I think this figure kind of illustrates that it doesn't make sense, even though it's based on the exact data that you have there. And that's because the system isn't a linear system.
So I think if you could clarify, this is Keith Brown. There was a reference to it being a formula, and it's really not so much a formula as it was the data that was collected and a chart which extrapolated the data, correct?
It's the best fit equation, essentially. So okay. I wouldn't say that you can extrapolate this and assume that if you do 300 orders, you'll have a queue of 3. This is more illustrating that there's not a correlation there, because there's too many different inputs into the system, essentially.
Okay. May I reply to that? It's Dennis Flynn with Beta.
Sure.
Yes, thank you for your explanation. I think sort of the last thing you said is probably the best takeaway is, look at this data, you look at this chart, that's sort of the best thing you take away from this is there really is no correlation from sort of one location number of transactions to the other. So I guess, therefore, I think our comment would then be, don't apply this equation, for trying to estimate or don't develop this formula for trying to estimate the number of vehicles you'd expect to queue here, because it really, you can't, I guess the best real takeaway is it just really isn't a strong correlation. So, we can't really use this data in this formula to make any sort of accurate estimate as to what the queue from the order point would expect to be, which kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about just, this is a difficult thing to quantify.
No, but this is Keith Brown again. I think what you can say in that in all of the McDonald's that we've put side by side drive-through, we have increased efficiency of the drive-through.
Right.
That is correct.
Yeah. The particular issue here is the stacking the street, but okay. But yeah. Okay. Is there anything else from the applicant or our expert before we ask commission members if they have questions? Do you want to do that before we open up to the public?
No, sir. It's Keith Brown.
Great. Okay. Any commission members or staff have questions or comments before we open up to the public?
Chuck, Fred Russo.
Fred.
I just want to say I ate my first McDonald's hamburger in 1958 in Hamden, Connecticut. And those days we would just park the car, not me, my dad and my mom, park the car and walk up to a window and eat in your car. And, you know, over the years, it's become a much more sophisticated type place to dine at. I was thinking if what you propose works, I'm not here to give you a hard time on it. It works. It's exactly the way you want it. And we know there'll be exceptions to the rule. But overall, 95% of the time, it works perfectly fine. My concern would be, what happens if McDonald's business increases? How do you overcome? I mean, what you have there is about as efficient as it's going to get. If you get more business, more drive-through, and it seems that's where the trend is, more drive-through and less dining room. Where does this plan leave us? Are we going to be back here again in 3 or 4 or 5 years, having to deal with the same problem? And it seems like, so this plan seems to meet the needs currently, and maybe it'll meet the needs for the next 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years. I don't know what the number's going to be. And I wish McDonald's all the luck that they do more business. That's what they're in business to do. But I guess my concern would be for the future, and I don't know if there's an answer to it, but if in the event the sales of McDonald's through the drive-through increased, what's left to do with what you have? It would just seem that you probably would have run out of space, and whether or not this whole system is even efficient for the size of the property. Not that McDonald's doesn't want to do the right thing, but the property will just allow so much to happen on it. And if the numbers increase, I don't see we could have another lane to take orders or whatever. I like the idea that the fact that you can actually increase the queue. I know it's a numbers game by opening up the window where you take the cash. That would really kind of reduce that queue and put more cars there. But, you know, I think in the long run, that's a temporary, you know, it's like a relief valve more than a solution. But anyway, that was my concern. More, not so much about today. I think, you know, what you've proposed is probably the maximum that what you can do in the property. The question would be is if sales do increase in the future, where do you go from here?
Yeah, if I may, it's Keith Brown. So I think this may be a non-answer, but I think you have to look at the fact that we do have an existing problem, right? And that drive-through has increased because, you know, since COVID, and we do have cars that are starting to spill out onto Main Street. So this allows at least 2 or 3 cars to now be on the property. In terms of speculation of what could happen in the future, you know, I mean, the traffic impact study is designed, you know, to look at, I believe it's a 3% increase. But, you know, unless there's a massive population increase, you know, in the town itself, I don't see that number really, you know, changing too much. And I don't think that we can speculate to what the next stage may be. I think, you know, our hope and our plan beyond that is to address the situation that we have now. And if it needs tweaking in the future, then we'll be back in front of the board, you know, asking them to take a look at something else.
Yeah. Jefferson Murphy, Keith hit the nail on the head. I think McDonald's has been a good neighbor and community member of Branford for a very long time. You've seen them a number of times come before you in the past, and I think that they want to maintain that good relationship with you. And if there was a problem, I think the two of you could certainly work something out communication wise, and that it may prompt an additional site plan application in the future. But we're here and now to address an existing problem, and it's a safety issue. And McDonald's wants to be, responsible and address that existing problem.
Thank you.
Chuck Inch here. Thank you, Fred. Any other questions, comments from commission members before we open up to the public? Hearing none, then let's go ahead. Oh, Harry, did you have something?
I just want to note for the record, if there are any other questions from commission members, that I have reviewed the staff report that's in the application file and during its preparation, and as an AICP planner, I will be endorsing it, just so that's for the record, and my resume is in the application file.
Right. Chuck Inch here. Thank you, Harry. Any other comments from anyone before we open it up? Hearing none, let's see if any member of the public wish to comment. Any member of the public wish to comment? I guess we can go back. Evan, do you see anybody?
I'd just like to reiterate that down at the bottom of your screen, there is a reactions button. You can select that and then further select to raise your hand. You can also indicate in the chat that you'd like to participate. And if you're calling in by phone, you can press *9. I do not see anyone that would like to participate.
Great. Okay. Does the applicant have any further comments? Anyone else?
Sir, it's Keith Brown.
Yes, Mr. Brown.
No, we're good.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further comments by commission members or staff, Mr. Flynn? Okay, hearing none, then we can close this matter as a public hearing. If we have time, we may talk about it, and I don't know if we'll be ready to vote on it. We may want a resolution on it, but that's where we are. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Great. So at this point, we'll proceed then with our next public hearing, which is, excuse me, Harry?
No, I just want to make sure that the screen was released by anyone, but I think that's happened. So thank you.
Okay, great. So our second public hearing is Vincent Federico, applicant, Jennifer Federico, owner, 1819 Etzel Road, special exception coastal site plan, demolition of an existing home and construction of a new home. Applicant ready to proceed on that one? Looks like Mr. Perito, looks like you're muted.
I think I've got Jim Preddy set up to be co-host.
Yeah, Mr. Preddy, what am I talking about? Yeah.
Thank you, Harry. Jim Preddy, Criscolo Engineering. We're at 420 East Main Street in Branford, representing Federico's at 18 Etzel Road. We've briefly talked about this before in relationship to 15 Etzel Road when we were before you a month or so, or maybe 2 months ago now, with the neighboring property. I'm going to share the screen if I can. Let's see. So, so this is the survey that you're seeing. These are the two houses at 15 Etzel and 18 Etzel. Again, this plan should be slightly familiar because it was the same survey for 15 Etzel, which you've already approved. The plan that we had submitted for the house at 18 Etzel, and again, this shows the footprint of the house you approved at 15 Etzel to kind of give you a sense for the shared driveway, and these are family members, and the pool area that they're going to share. The plan that we did submit did have plans showing the house being FEMA compliant, but it also included a site landscape wall to kind of flatten out this area for the pool. We also had and when it got sent to DEP, some of the comments were about they were not happy with the landscape wall. They considered it possibly a flood and erosion control structure. We have Well, that's interesting. Hold on, please. Oh, I had it right.
If you want me to throw it up.
No, I have it. So I thought that I was looking at the wall. This is actually a grade. So anyway, there was a wall here, and there was a wall over on this side next to the house, which this plan has taken out. The double line is the edge of the pavers in the contour line. So I thought I was looking at the wall still. In any event, there was the comment from DP about not liking the landscape wall. So we've taken that out. We've graded it so that there's a 3-to-1 slope here and a 3-to-1 slope here, which meets the regulations. The stockpile, possible stockpile area has been added. There was a comment in the staff report. I called out on here for the slopes to be protected with an erosion control blanket. I did have a conversation with Evan earlier today, and there was a request to have the slopes be planted, which we could certainly do. There are many Connecticut native salt tolerant low plantings that are on the Yukon list. I will need to discuss that with my client and come up with a suggestion for staff, but we will accept that as an additional condition of approval. Do have, I thought we may have shown this already, but at the last, possibly at the last meeting. Are you looking at the floor plans now? Or are you still looking at the site plan?
We can see the floor plans.
Okay. So these are the floor plans for the building. You can see this is the existing footprint. So we weren't going any farther than, in fact, we're pulling back away from the water in some locations and then growing the house toward the upland area a little bit for the garage. I did have also thought elevations here. Second. Okay. So here are, I apologize for the confusion. There's been a few iterations of these. So this is the elevations, all the lower level. These are all, this will all be, we are in A zone, not a VE zone. So all this will be built to the AE standards with various flood ports. This is all non-heated space. It's basically garage and storage space in the lower level. Flood resistant materials, etc. Yeah. But that's so anyway, that's why we're here. This had gotten pushed because we had made a change and DEP needed more time to review it, and then after the review we addressed their comments, and so that's why this got pushed a couple of meetings. But originally we had submitted it with the house next door at the same time.
Okay. Chuck Anderson, thank you, Mr. Purdy. Do you have anything else, or?
No, I mean, again, typical erosion controls will be installed. Everything will be accessed from the water side. They do have already DEP Army Corps permits to rebuild the existing seawall, which has already started. But all the house construction will be from the water side. That's all I get. And again, we've addressed DEP's CAM review comments.
Chuck Anderson, thank you, Mr. Purdy. Evan, did you do the staff report on this one?
I did, as Mr. Preddy, described for us, this is, a similar application or a part of, a coupled together application with 15 Etzel Road for 2 single-family homes, on 2 individual lots. They're requiring a coastal site plan as well as a special exception for grading within 100 feet of a critical coastal resource. They meet the bulk requirements for the R3 residential district, with the exception of 3 variances that they got granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals. No landscaping plan has been provided. They meet the parking requirements. No lighting information has been submitted, but I've added a condition that would require any lighting to be compliant with section 6.7. They did not provide an erosion and sediment control plan. However, those features have been added or erosion control measures have been added to the submitted site plan. They do have compliant 3-to-1 slopes on this plan. The last revised site plan also removed the landscaping walls, Mr. Preddy stated, after some comments from Deep. I believe there's 2 separate landscape walls that were removed, one west of the house and one on 3 sides of the proposed pool and the patio area. We did want the applicant to confirm if any measures were going to be taken to reinforce those slopes. I added a condition this afternoon, which I circulated to the Planning and Zoning Commission, that would require some plantings to be put on that area. In past applications, we've required, I think, a 15-foot wide buffer. I don't think 15 feet would fit in this particular site. So I adjusted the language in that condition that would allow the applicant to come up with an appropriate width, and then the town planner as designee would be the one to approve that. The applicant also added a stockpile to the site plan in its latest revision. The commission would need to find that the measure proposed, to the extent that they are alternatives from the 2002 guideline for soil and erosion control, are acceptable. Given the proximity of the project to a critical coastal resource, the commission should consider including a requirement for an erosion and sediment control financial guarantee per section 610E4 of the town of Branford zoning regulations. The condition has been added that would require this. Based on the application materials, it looks like the special exception criteria are satisfied, as well as the criteria from the coastal site plan section 9.7. The referrals were sent to Deep. Those were circulated to the commission as well. The 2 responses that we received for them, one dated March 28th, one dated April 20th. They had requested or pointed out that they wanted the removal of the landscaping walls, which the applicant has done, replaced it with a 3-to-1 slope. They also had encouraged compliance with the floodplain management ordinance. That should be a part of the engineering department's review for anything in the floodplain. They had also recommended that the pool be reinforced to withstand the effects of floodwaters. I believe that would also be a part of the engineering review. And finally, staff recommends 2 findings. The first of which is that the coastal site plan is consistent with the goals and policies of the Coastal Area Management Act. The second finding is that the proposed use of the property is consistent with the special exception criteria. The first condition we are proposing is that prior to the start of construction, the following shall be completed to the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement officer. Erosion control measures shall be installed and maintained throughout construction, and necessary measures to control any dust generated by fill brought into the site or movement of earth on the site shall be implemented. Prior to the issuance of a zoning permit or a building permit, a soil erosion control bond shall be established per section 610E4 of the zoning regulations. Any proposed lighting has to be consistent with section 6.7 of our zoning regulations. And I will bring up my revised staff report, just so we can take a look at the condition that I had added this afternoon. I just highlighted this here. Condition 4 is that the applicant shall revise the site plan to show a vegetated buffer and landscaping schedule of salt tolerant plantings to protect adjacent coastal resources and stabilize the fill to the satisfaction of the town planner or his designee, as they may be advised by other town staff. The revisions and plantings or any additional seedings to stabilize the fill shall be completed in 6 months from the approval and approved by the town planner or his designee prior to the issuance of a certificate of compliance. And that the width of this buffer shall be determined by the applicant and approved by the town planner or his designee. And then I had also cleaned up condition 5. I noticed some errors in the language, and that really just states that the applicant shall provide monthly progress reports to the zoning enforcement officer on the status of the erosion control measures, and that the zoning enforcement officer can waive this requirement. And they also can reinstate this requirement if they feel that it's necessary.
Chair, thank you, Evan. Any questions, comments from commission members or staff before we open up for public comment? Hearing none, then let's open it up for public comment. Any member of the public wish to comment?
Just like to reiterate, down at the bottom of your screen, you can use the reactions button, followed by raise hand button to indicate that you'd like to speak, or indicate in the chat that you'd like to participate. I do not see any members of the public that would like to participate.
Chuck Ennis here. Thank you, Evan. Any further comments by the applicant? Are you good with those conditions, Mr. Preddy?
Yes, sir. No more comments.
Any further comments by commission members or staff? Hearing none, then we can close this matter as a public hearing, and we may be able to take this up after we close our public hearings. Thank you, Mr. Preddy.
Thank you.
Brings us into item number 3, which is Kate Walbert and Raphael Pelly, applicants and owners for 11 Rex Tile Road. This is a special exception for an oversized accessory building and home occupation, major home occupation. Is the applicant ready to proceed?
Harry, could you make Jennifer Hustis a co-host, please?
Sure. Hang on a second. Okay, all set. Anyone else that should be in this application made a co-host, Jennifer?
No, Kate Walbert and Raphael Pelly were unable to make the meeting. They're overseas, and they are sorry that they are not able to attend.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm Jennifer Hustis from Hustis Tucker Architects, and I'm representing Kate Walbert and Raphael Pelly at 11 Rex Tile Road, and I will share my screen. So just to give you a little bit of background, this is Rex Tile Road here, and their house is right here. The existing garage is here, and they would like to put a second story on the garage to create 2 offices. The owners are an architect and a writer, and they both, the writer works from home. She writes from home, and the architect has an office in New York City, but is since pandemic has been working out of his home as well. And so they are in need of more space to do that. So this is we have a zoning variance already. Just go back to the site plan. So you can see that we were very close to the property line in this back corner. So we have a zoning variance for that. And so we come to you today for approval for the height. So this is a floor plan of this space. This is the driveway side of the property. They will continue to have storage here. Oh, the home is in this corner. So this is the first floor studio is here for the architect, and the stairs going up to the second floor. So the writer's studio is here and small exercise space here. This is the street elevation. So they wanted it to continue to look like a garage. So we have these sort of faux garage doors on this side and one operable door that is for the storage, and then the studio space above. This faces south, which is their yard. This is the entrance into the studio space, and windows for the first floor studio and the second floor studio. The rear of the studio here, and the back side, if you will, of the studio here. I have some photographs just that might help in just orientating, giving you some kind of indication of where. So this white building is the existing garage space. This is their neighbor's garage who are uphill, and you can see there's sort of a retaining wall here that this building is already set up quite a bit higher than their garage. And then the neighbor's home is quite a bit higher as the street slopes up in this direction. So the home next door is quite a bit higher. And this is the rear of the existing garage here, and the property steps up to the other neighbor's property. So in both corners of the lot, the adjacent properties step up a bit from this existing. This is a view of the back of the existing garage. And this is from the neighbor's property looking at the rear of that. So you can't even really see it. And then this is the owner's backyard with the view of the side of the existing garage. The materials are meant to kind of match what's currently there. We're using a shiplap siding that is, I think it's called a novelty siding, which has a little swoop to it. Wood windows, wood plank doors, and a standing seam metal roof. We're matching some existing exposed rafter tails for the details. I think that's about it. I don't know if you've had any questions for me.
Thank you, Ms. Eustace. Maybe at this time we'll ask Evan to review the staff report.
Sure. So like Jennifer had described for us, the applicants are before us today as they are proposing 445 square foot accessory structure that will have a second story put onto an existing garage. They're going to be exceeding the 15-foot height limit that triggers a special exception. So that is why they are before us today. There is no accessory apartment or plans to have an additional unit put into this property. That would not be permitted in this residential R2 district. They did receive variances November 16th, 2021, as the second story is into two setbacks, the rear and the side. No landscaping plan was provided. They do meet the parking requirements. They appeared last night before the Stony Creek Architectural Review Board. They were issued a positive recommendation from that board. Based on the application materials, it appears they satisfy the special exception criteria. Staff recommends one finding that the proposed use of the property is consistent with the special exception criteria per section 9.8 of the zoning regulations. And one condition that prior to the issuance of a zoning permit or building permit, erosion control measures shall be installed to the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement officer.
Understood. Thank you, Evan. Any questions or comments from commission members or staff before we open it up to the public?
Chuck, Fred Russo.
Fred?
What is the height of the building going to be?
22 feet, 5 inches.
Okay, thank you.
Chuck, and share. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Let's go ahead and then see if there are any public comments. Any member of the public wish to comment? Evan?
Just to reiterate, down the bottom of your screen, there's a reactions button. You can indicate that you'd like to speak by selecting raise hand, or type it in the chat that you'd like to participate. Or press *9 if you are dialing it. I do not see anyone that would like to participate.
Chuck and share. Great. Thank you. Does the applicant have any further comments?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Any further comments by staff or commission members? Hearing none, then I think we can close this matter as public hearing, and this is something I think we will discuss in a little bit. Thank you, Ms. Eustace.
Thank you.
That brings us then to the next item on our agenda, which are our minutes from our April 20th, 2023 meeting. And I don't know if we've had a chance to review those, and if anyone would like to make an appropriate motion, they were mailed to us with our packet.
Joe Vayuso moves to approve the minutes.
Joe makes a motion to approve the April 20, 2023 minutes. Is there a second?
Fred Russo, I'll second that.
Fred seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick is in favor.
Fred Russo?
Fred Russo in favor.
Joe Vayuso?
Joe's in favor.
Marcy Pelusi?
Marcy's in favor.
And Chair is also in favor, so those minutes are adopted. Harry, any correspondence?
Harry Smith, Town Planner. We do have a piece of correspondence from Transcend Wireless regarding a cell tower site on Leeds Island Road, and I'm just going to quickly show you where it is, just so you know where it is. So this is on the south side of Leeds Island Road, property that was formerly owned by Jay Medlin here. I believe this parcel has been retained and is leased by Transcend Wireless, so I don't think that's owned by the Land Trust, which now owns all the surrounding land, I believe. There is, I think, a home on the other side, the north side of Leeds Island Road. They're proposing to add a backup generator, a 48 kilowatt backup generator to a pad within the sort of existing area around the base of the cell tower. So that's the proposal, and that's all the correspondence there is.
Great. Chuck Industry, thank you, Harry. Then let's go over our public hearing items then and figure out what we want to do with those. So item number 1 again was the McDonald's application. I think we heard some, this thing was thoroughly researched, and so we'll open it up for discussion. Joe Chadwick, why don't you, your thoughts or comments?
I never thought I would learn so much about the operation of a McDonald's by being on a commission. I greatly appreciate it, and I've probably never heard in the time I've been here math terms like I've heard tonight. I think we've probably picked this scab as far as it will go. My opinion is that McDonald's will not spend a penny unless it makes them $1 back. I can't believe they would be doing any of this to increase a nonconformity. Granted, it is a nonconformity. There are certain difficulties with it in terms of a perfect world, but in terms of what we are looking at, I believe it is an improvement. And I will be voting positively.
Great. Thank you, Joe. Fred Russo.
I think that the plan that they proposed is sufficient for the time right now. Whether or not it's going to have long legs and meet the needs of McDonald's down the road is only one can predict that. So I would say that I would be in favor of it, but I do have a doubt in my mind that if business increases for them, which I hope it does, we want McDonald's there. There was talk of Burger King's 400 of them closing down. I don't know where, but if they close a Burger King down in Branford, McDonald's would end up with more business. And that, there's other reasons why you can increase your business, just not because people, not just the dynamics of what's there, but things change. But I think, in principle, I would also be in favor of it, of their proposal.
Great. Thank you, Fred. Chuck Anderson. Joe Vayuso?
Joe Vayuso. Well, originally I was very skeptical of what they proposed back whenever it was a few months ago, but listening to them tonight, listening to them in the past, it sort of convinced me that they convinced me that they're probably doing a good thing or a better thing to do an improvement for what the situation is there. So, I guess I'm going to be in favor of it because they convinced me that the doubts I had were probably not correct.
Chuck Anderson. Thank you, Joe. Marcy?
Yeah, no, I think that I understand their logic. I have no issues with the parking. I think the pedestrian circulation will be much safer. I think the queuing will go through much faster. So I never had an issue with it. I'm surprised we dragged this on as long as we did personally, but glad we're getting to a resolution.
Great. Thank you, Marcy. And I think I've also come around. This was, the issue is that this is a weird property. And if they had done it like every other McDonald's they put it in the back, we wouldn't even be here. But because it's a weird site, it's a small site, and they got that chunk, that bite taken out in the corner, they got to put it closer to the street. And I think that we asked the right questions. We're concerned about safety. And if that is the choke point and it's closer to the street and they're going out in the street now, then, that's why we asked all these questions. But I think I agree with everyone that having having two of them could, they made a good point that if you got the slow person or whatever, you got the other lane so that can move them along. It doesn't stop it. And also the net numbers, it's an existing non-conforming situation, but it actually allows more, by one. And, the other things were, the mobile stuff and other things I think could alleviate some issues. Plus, there is a stoplight right there. And I think that, so the expectation when you're driving, the fear is that if it's going out right under the street, then, you could have some rear enders or you could have some issues. It's bad, but I think people have the expectation there because the light's there now that they may have to slow down or whatever. So it sounds like, it's covered and it is potentially an improvement. I understand why they're doing it. They're doing it nationwide. It's a good thing to do. And it's just this site that caused these problems. But, I think we did the right thing, having an independent expert look at that. I'm okay with it too. So for purposes of staff, I don't know if there are any conditions or other things. There are other things we can talk, I know they made revisions, you put in bollards and things like that. And I don't know, does staff, we haven't directed you what to do, and now it sounds like we have, but do you want to write up a resolution? How do you want to, what do you want to do?
Harry Smith, Town Planner. Now that we do have direction, I think as staff, we'd like to look at the entire file and see if there are any conditions we would propose for the commission to consider, and bring that possibly to the next meeting of the commission. So you could do a vote then, rather than do it off the cuff tonight.
Right. I think that makes sense. It's an important application. We've gone through it, and And there were a few things along the way too. There were a few other issues about the walking lane. I know that was an issue for the last one too, because now you're walking across two things of traffic. I think they addressed that. And then there was the neighbor, the fencing and
the bollards. Yeah.
and the bollards and, just making sure those are correctly shown on the plan and everything else. So does that work for everyone? We'll direct the staff to come up with a resolution, possible conditions, review it, and then we'll probably vote on the next meeting.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Harry Smith, Town Planner, do you absolutely need that in the form of a resolution, or would just simply propose findings and conditions be?
Yeah, findings and conditions is fine.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
I think it's fine. Okay, so then let's go on to number 2, which is 1819 Etzel Road. That's the special exception coastal site plan. Didn't hear any public comment on that one. Evan, you did have that's another one that was reviewed a number of times. We got a couple of DEP letters and they did make some revisions in response to that. Evan, I think you added an additional finding because they're doing a lot of work real close to the water. I assume that's the reason for your, the erosion condition and the planting condition that you added. Is that right, Evan? Or
exactly. And the concerns expressed by DEEP. And I think just looking back at past applications with a similar adjacent critical coastal resource had utilized these same conditions.
Okay. And then Evan, I know you did review this during your presentation of what the proposed findings and conditions were, and now you've posted them in front of us. You want to just run down the next page as well, because it did go on to a second page. The 2 findings of consistency and then compliance with the conditions. And they're some of them are standard, and then the vegetative buffer, that was the addition to 5, and then on number 4. I think that does anyone have any questions? And if not, does someone make a motion to approve this application by adopting the findings and conditions in the revised staff report, the updated staff report that Evan sent us this afternoon, and it's currently displayed in front of us, the one that was sent out today.
Fred Roos, I'll make that motion that we accept this application based on its findings, conditions, and the third leg of that.
Right. Okay, great. So Fred makes a motion to approve by adopting the findings and conditions in the staff report. Is there a second?
Chadwick will second.
Joe Chadwick seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick is in favor.
Fred Russo?
Fred Russo in favor.
Joe Vayuzo?
In favor.
Marcy? Can we hear you, Marcy?
Sorry, I couldn't get to my unmute because the screen was still on. I'm in favor.
Okay. And chair is also in favor. So that application is approved. Let's move on then to item number 3, which is Kate Walbert and Raphael Pelli at 11 Rexdale Road. That was a special exception for the oversized accessory building. Seems to be pretty straightforward. Again, no public comments. COVID application here. So you want to pull that one up?
Wrong screen.
Oops. Okay, this is pretty easy. Anyone have any comments by that on this application? Again, fairly straightforward. If not, does someone want to make a motion to approve the application by adopting the findings and conditions in the staff report prepared by Evan, which currently displayed in front of us?
Chadwick will make that motion.
Motion made by Joe Chadwick. Is there a second?
Joe seconds.
Joe Vayuzo seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick is in favor.
Fred Russo?
Fred Russo in favor.
Joe Vayuzo?
Still in favor.
Marcy Pelusi?
Marcy's in favor.
And chair's also in favor. So that application's approved. That brings us then to old business. And all the items under old business are scheduled A number of them are scheduled for a public hearing. I think numbers 1, 3, 5, and 6 are scheduled for a public hearing at our next meeting. The other ones haven't been scheduled yet. They may come up on our June 1st meeting, which would be 2 meetings. But there's nothing that we need to do with those. Those will all be considered at our public hearings. Item number, so that brings us into new business, which is Michael and Nancy Giuliani, 37 Branford Road. That's a special exception for grading, a 6.8 application, and that's just received, and we'll need to schedule a public hearing for that. Is that correct, Harry?
Harry Smith, Town Planner. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Does staff have any comments on the other item? I didn't went over the old business, any of the old business items, anything you need to comment on, or just, they're happening.
Harry Smith, Town Planner. I don't have any other comments at this point. I think it's all been covered.
Great. That brings into other business, an informal discussion, proposed plan development district at 4981-111 Commercial Parkway. And I see Mr. Nuff present. So Mr. Nuff, you want to proceed?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, John Nuff, attorney with an office at 147 Broad Street in Milford, Connecticut. And here tonight on behalf of Branford Development Partners, which is the contract purchaser of the properties located at 49 and 81 through 111 Commercial Parkway. We all know the site very, very well. You know that you approved a Amazon last mile facility at this property about a year or so ago. We are located in the BL8R zone. Just for clarity, we are not in a CAM zone, but we're also very much aware that this is a very important site for the town of Branford. And so we're really happy to be before you this evening on the informal basis as recommended by your regulations and prior to submitting a PDD master plan application. We had a very good conversation with your staff, both Evan and Harry and Jamie, a couple of weeks ago. So we're very happy to be before you. I'm sure you've noted that we have taken your recommendations on what we should submit for an informal conversation with you very seriously. The goal is not to overwhelm you, but rather we just want to be as informative as possible to facilitate a very truly robust conversation with the commission, to demonstrate the degree of care and thoughts that my client has put into the proposal, and to demonstrate in a very concrete manner that the applicant has a very experienced team and an impeccable reputation in every town where they build a community. So in that regard, I'm going to introduce Howard Rappaport, who is a principal of both Branford Development Partners and Continental Properties, which is a sort of the parent company of Branford Development Partners. And the last thing I'll say before turning it over to Howard is, I'm glad that we're getting before you this evening when it's still relatively early in the evening. This is a really important project for us. We think it's a very important site for the town. And our goal is to have a very candid and fulsome conversation with you. So to start off is Howard Rappaport from Continental Properties.
Thank you, John. As John indicated, my name is Howard Rappaport, and I'm a principal with Continental Properties. Just to give you a brief bit of background before we turn it over to our other presenters, Continental is among the largest developers in the state of Connecticut, having developed 8 modern rental communities and in excess of approximately 1,400 luxury apartments over the past 10 years. We've developed in 7 municipalities throughout the state, in Fairfield County, New Haven County, and Hartford County. Our notable developments include 1 Glastonbury, 10 Trumbull, of course, and our newest community, 1 West Hartford, which will be an iconic rental community located in the heart of West Hartford Center. I am a Connecticut native from Woodbridge and have always wanted to develop a community in Branford. Our expertise and our true skill set is in building modern rental communities that are highly amenitized. Our communities are Class A truly best in class, as you will see on the photos to be presented by our team this evening. And our communities are the gem, I think, are the gem of the towns in which they are located. We are a privately held company that has been building for 66 years and have built in excess of 25,000 dwelling units of all types since 1957. One major feature that differentiates us is that we are generational holders, which means that we do not build with the intention of selling the community, and we rarely sell, if ever. Long-term ownership provides your municipality with a number of items, including more stable management, one constant contact, which would be me, long-term curb appeal for the community, and what we believe is better quality design and construction because we're long-term holders. We're extremely excited to redevelop this important property, potentially redevelop this property here in Branford, which we view as the gateway to the town, or a gateway to the town. Our objective is to create another best-in-class, highly amenitized modern rental community of which the stakeholders of Branford will be proud. These amenities include what will be among the largest clubhouses in the state at over 8,000 square feet, with a cinema room, golf simulator, private co-working spaces, catering kitchen, and an elaborate fitness center. Our extensive outdoor amenities always include a resort quality pool and cabanas. And you will see in the photos we present tonight other examples of what we have built throughout the state. As we go through the program tonight and in future hearings, as well as when the proposed community is built, operating, and occupied, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And again, I thank you for your consideration this evening.
Thanks, Howard. Before we turn it over to our other presenters, I want to give you just a very quick rundown of some of the numbers. We'll be going through the bulk requirements and all those things at the end. We want you to understand what the project is going to look like before we talk about those numbers. But just to give you a preview, we're proposing a total of 436 units in 2 phases. The first phase would be 232 units, followed by 204 units. The second phase would not begin until the first phase was fully constructed. It will include a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. It will include a clubhouse, as Howard just described, park-like setting, and we would make a offer of a set aside of affordable units of 5%. As I said, we'll be discussing the specific proposals or the regulations and the bulk standards after we go through the concept plans. But generally what our process is going to be is what the commission is very familiar with. This informal discussion. There's a couple of buildings for which we will likely require a variance. And so we want to be very candid with the commission and we'll point those out. Back to you with the master plan. Obviously, Inland Wetland Commission, which has approved obviously the Amazon project previously. We expect they will do so again. And then back to you for a site plan application. My colleague, Sarah Sharp, is going to be sharing the screen and running the slide deck. And so I'm going to ask her to start that now. You know, one of the things that's sort of interesting about this property is that, as we all know, the commission approved the site for a last mile facility, and now we're here before you proposing a multifamily community, and you might be scratching your head. How can you go on a site from a last mile facility to multifamily? And if you think about it, it really makes a lot of sense. And most importantly, is because traffic is such an important component of how this property gets developed, and frankly, if it gets developed. And the one thing that the Amazon last mile facility shares with multifamily is that you don't have peak hour traffic coming out onto the roadway system. But even more than that, and Sarah, can you start sharing? Gary, have you made, or Evan, can you allow Sarah to share her screen?
Harry Smith, she should be able to do it, but let me double check.
Yeah, she just
I saw the chat.
Put in the chat, yeah.
Let me see if I can find. I thought for sure I'd made her co-host. Perhaps I did not. I apologize. So you should be able to do it now, Sarah.
Thank you.
All right, terrific. So this slide is really interesting. So obviously you can see that our the location of 49 and 81 through 111 Commercial Parkway is sort of highlighted in green, and we have a aerial photograph. And really what this site is, in addition to providing a really wonderful opportunity for the community, it is a site that has great access, both vehicular and pedestrian. So obviously, if you work in New Haven or up the coast, you can easily get out to 95 and access those locations. But more importantly, from the reason why we have this slide is this will create a really nice opportunity for people who choose to visit other local amenities, either on foot or by bicycle. And we'll be talking about our bicycle share program a little bit later. But we tend to think, I think, Commercial Parkway, just because for years it was a Home Depot or a grocery store or an Amazon, but this really has a really wonderful location as an opportunity to provide pedestrian access to, really many of the wonderful amenities, close by in Branford. You can even get to downtown very easily. And, certainly you can do so on foot, and on some locations, it might be a little bit easier to do that by bicycle. But, we think that this is an entirely appropriate location for a multifamily community. So with that quick introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Jason Williams from SLR, who is a landscape architect, who's going to walk you through the concept plans, and then we're going to hear from Don Mancini. Jason?
Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Terrific. My name is Jason Williams. I'm a principal landscape architect with SLR Consulting, 195 Church Street in New Haven, Connecticut. So on all of our plans, north is to the left, to the east, Commercial Parkway, to the west, the Branford Connector. When we began visioning the layout for this property, we wanted the building massing to really reflect a walkable village setting. The project includes 18 buildings with 436 units, as John mentioned, to be built in 2 phases. 16 of the buildings are 3-story, with 2 buildings being 4 stories. 2 of these buildings also have elevators within them. We like to add the elevators in these buildings so that we can create a different product type that appeals to many different types of users. On the north side and the east side of the project, we have a series of 8 garages that help to screen views of our internal parking from Commercial Parkway. At the center of our project site is our large clubhouse with rear amenity space. And centered on our main access drive, identified with the number 1, it really creates a sense of arrival as you come into the site and you can showcase this grand clubhouse. We've positioned the main entrance into the site just opposite the least used ingress and egress of Walmart, which just happens to be on the other side of Commercial Parkway.
Hey Jason, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. Some on the team can't see the entire screen. I just want to make sure the commission can see the entirety of the site plan. Harry, can you see it okay?
Harry Smith, Town Planner. Yes, I think possibly if you could zoom in a little as various features are being described, that might be a little bit more helpful.
Gotcha. Okay. There were some on the call that said that the site plan is being cut off. So long as that's not the case, that was our concern, and I'm sure we can zoom in as necessary.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, Jason.
So as mentioned, our main entrance comes straight in where you see our brick paving centered on our focal clubhouse element. But we also have a secondary ingress and egress that ties into the north and to the existing cul-de-sacs. Driveways and parking throughout really provide an efficiency for tenants and emergency vehicles, and sidewalks link buildings throughout the entirety of the parcel. And along these sidewalks, you can see identified with the number 9, hopefully, we have these small destination nodes along the sidewalks that create kind of a secondary amenity use. Next slide. So these areas are really important because as we designed this site, we wanted to really encourage movement, a healthy lifestyle, this walkability lifestyle, not only linking in green boxes, you can see these nodes of gathering spaces, but also creating pollinator pathways throughout the entire site. By developing this village site plan where buildings are spaced apart and rotated, we're creating a lot of air movement throughout the entire site so that songbirds and insects can really migrate between these green destination areas that are full of different types of plantings. Also, what's important, as I mentioned, in purple at the center, our large amenity outdoor space that also links just to the east and a proposed dog park. Next slide. So if we tone down the buildings and the parking area, you could see really the tremendous amount of green space that we're proposing. Native plantings really are going to complement the majority of all of these areas. We really envision pathways moving through the site, hitting these destination plazas and landscaping, all native landscaping that creates an overstory, an understory, a shrub, and then this herbaceous layer. So we really have a tiered, almost woodland forested approach to our landscape plan. Next. So as Howard mentioned a little bit with Continental Properties, we really want to create projects and showcase our efforts to create a sustainable development by including things like outdoor sculpture and outdoor art, but also a bike share program so that residents can easily jump on a bike and leave the site. EV charging stations for those that own electric vehicles, and even solar panels on the clubhouse so that we can offset some of the electricity use and help to power our large clubhouse. Next. Continental Properties really begins by developing a vision for this active and passive amenity space to really create a lifestyle on each property for all ages. We really spend a lot of time visioning all of the use areas throughout the site so that it's actually a really exciting place to live. Next. And we've constructed many of these all through Connecticut. All of the different types of spaces that we build are popular for entertaining, for meeting family and friends, and even gathering and meeting new tenants and creating really new bonds that previously you may not have gotten at other developments. Next slide. As I mentioned, at the heart of all of our projects is this central focus feature, really architecturally significant clubhouse, which include amenities for all 4 seasons, large great rooms and dining areas with kitchens, libraries and game rooms, co-working space, gym and yoga studio, golf simulator, and a cinema. Next. This is an image of one of our proposed 3-story residential buildings. We're designing these with a coastal New England vernacular, bringing in a mix of materials such as vertical and horizontal board and batten with different complementary colors and fenestrations along the building face that help to break up the building massing. Additionally, a really robust landscape plan at the foundation helps to soften some of the straight architectural building lines. Next. Up top, you can see an existing photo standing on Commercial Parkway looking into the site. Pretty lackluster. Well, as part of this project, we are proposing a series of garages along Commercial Parkway that help to define our project edge, but also help to screen interior parking areas. additionally added streetscape elements like shade trees, new sidewalks and landscaping, helped to not only beautify Commercial Parkway, but create a safe and pleasant walk down to Route 1 to access all of the amenities along Route 1. Next. At this point, we're going to turn it over to Mike Mancini, I believe.
John Mancini.
John Mancini, I'm sorry.
There you go.
I was about to say John Schmidt.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, John. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we're good, John.
Okay. So one thing I just want to add to what Jason, so for the record, John Mancini, principal with BL Companies, 355 Research Parkway, Meriden, Connecticut. Also, I am a Branford resident in addition. I just want to point out that I think Jason alluded to this as he got into the slides a little, but everything that you guys were witnessing as symbolic imagery of what Continental builds, those are real photographs. I just want to make sure folks understood that. That's what they built and been able to capture for this presentation. So just a brief discussion on, what we did from John alluded to it earlier on, this change of use from, we got this last mile facility approved, and now we've turned to this fortunate connection with Continental Homes to potentially have this residential community come here. So it's important to understand that back as far as the early 90s, when the Walmart was first developed, one of the basic problems with this site is that although its best use was probably something similar to Walmart, Target was coming here, Home Depot was coming here, finally gave up and went to East Haven. You name it, wanted to be here from a retailer standpoint. All along, they were always being delayed and put off, not by the town, not by these boards, but really by the fact that the Amtrak bridge construction was continuously and perpetually delayed. And so it wasn't until 2013 when the Amtrak bridge fully got built, open. It was delayed for several reasons: high-speed rail, a change to their design, yada, yada, yada. Well, during that time, and then most recently, the DOT and this owner, the Shapiros, with a variety of different developers, kept approaching the state and the town. The town was always completely in line and on board with some major transportation improvements for this area. And those funds just were never there. And most recently, in 2018, we were fortunate to win the award of a CROG study for looking at this interchange. And I bring that up because the project that is being proposed before you is we are positioning our buildings in a manner that if the ramp were to bend into Commercial Parkway and Commercial Parkway were to tee into that to eliminate a intersection, this project and its building positioning would allow for that. So we are not preventing from a larger future potentially funded transportation improvement to occur at this location. But while we're dealing with reality, we presented to you a year ago the approval and went through and got approval for the Amazon project. But during that process, of which there was a peer review consultant for you guys for traffic, at that time, because of a lot of factors, we were using data that we had collected for that study, and we were building upon it, just continued to project numbers for the future. And we had to add trips for the approved Vox Church. We had to add trips for the approved Aldi's and Bank, and so on and so forth. the numbers were a little bit getting out of kilter. So we approached the DOT last year, and the DOT said, please do brand new counts for all these intersections, both in August for a summer count and in the fall for when school's back in session count. And believe it or not, one of the reasons why, besides the fact that this is a low trip generator, is by assembling and adding and continuing to project numbers, those counts, when we actually did the counts, they were lower than all the trips we were adding hypothetically that would be coming through here. So we gave those values to the DOT, and they've approved our new volumes for any type of project that would come to the site. The DOT is finally convinced that they have the right numbers as background traffic. That is relevant, and the reason why I'm saying that is because those other numbers were inflated, even though these trips exceed what was the Amazon trip generation, because if you remember, most of their traffic was off peak. We're still talking about a Saturday peak trip generation of 206 cars, which is a very small amount of traffic for a development of this size. In comparison, just so that folks can wrap their head around this, if you were to literally take these 21 acres and plop a Starbucks on it, a 2,400 square foot Starbucks, and nothing else, it would look like a little kiosk on this site. But if that's all you built on this site, the peak hour trips similarly on a Saturday for that Starbucks would be 211 trips versus 206. The detailed report would come with any application to this, and all of those numbers would be available for everyone to review. But really the point is what can we do to now deal with what we have, which is, let's face it, when you drive up this road, and as a resident, I come up this road, and the DOT has done a inadequate job of controlling the contractors that are using that ever-changing contractor's yard that is right adjacent to us. And the commuter parking lot is, I can't even describe it. It's just an open sea of pavement with worn out parking spaces and looks like a mess. So what we're proposing to do is to not only propose a streetscape to the front of our site, as Jason pointed out in that really nice before and after rendering, but we plan on carrying the streetscape, street lights, street trees, and a hedge on the back side of the sidewalk to help screen what is there from creating a better, safer pedestrian path, but also visually a much nicer, pleasant feel for anybody, whether you're Montoya residents, whether you're coming to Walmart, going to Vox Church, going to the pool and queue, whatever it is, you're going to have a better experience. So we plan on, it's about 1,000 feet from our property corner down to the intersection. And that's an improvement that we plan on making. We will need the DOT's cooperation because the right-of-way is limited. So we will need to get either a permanent highway easement for the elements I described, or there'll need to be a taking that obviously we would facilitate, but it would go from the state to the town. So it's been a long time trying to develop this property, and John put it really perfectly, is unfortunately, this property has to be viewed with what can go there that is a efficient, lower traffic generator. And this project is one. Besides the fact that it looks a lot nicer than even a last mile facility would look on this property.
John, you're done?
Yep.
Okay, that was terrific. And Sarah, don't change that yet because you know what, Sarah, if you can just trace your cursor over the red dashed line, because I want the commission to understand where the two phases would go. So on the left side or the north side of that red dashed line, that would be phase one. And obviously that would include the clubhouse, which is important. And the goal would be to get that completely finished, CO'd completely before we would go on to the next step. And so obviously when we talk about the regulations that would apply to this PDD, we would include a provision that would allow us to treat the entirety of the parcel as one parcel, because obviously we would have a difficulty complying with some of the setback requirements. But I know that there is a past practice with the commission in doing so in PDDs, and we'd be taking advantage of that as well. So it would be essentially an invisible property line, but we want to be able to do that both for the phasing, financing, and just sort of flexibility purposes. But again, that's where the line would be between phase one and phase two. Obviously, we have two parcels currently. That line is a little bit further to the south, but that would be a simple lot line revision. So with that, Sarah, if you can put up the proposed bulk requirements. So these are very similar to what you have approved in the past with other PDDs. In some cases, particularly the lot area per unit, they're a little bit more generous in this case than in other PDDs. Frontage, minimum square, all sort of pretty basic. Setbacks, the same. A couple of things I want to point out here. One is the building heights, and this is important. So you heard Jason and John talk about there'd be 2 4-story buildings. You can go back and look at the site plan, so I can point out which 2 those are, but they're further into the site. If you can highlight, Sarah, buildings 12 and 13. So it's the one where Sarah's cursor is right now. And then also just immediately to the left of that, to the north, that's the other, nope, to the left of that. That's the other proposed 4-story building. So those 2 buildings would require a variance. You'll recall that Amazon received the height variance, but we chose those 2 buildings for that different product type because they're further into the site and would have no impact on frankly anybody other than those driving up and down the connector. So that's the one issue with regard to heights. And also with the rest of the buildings, you know that in the PDD, the maximum height is 40 feet, unless of course you have a gable roof, in which case the maximum height is 42 feet. That's measured to the very top of the building, not to the midpoint. One of the things that Howard and Continental do frequently is they propose a hip roof and not a true gable roof. Hip roof is a little more complicated. It's a little more expensive. It's more structurally sound. In some cases, it can be more attractive, but it also requires a little bit greater height. So there's a good possibility when we return to you with the PDD application that we will be making a request in the same way that you approved a 42-foot maximum height for gable roofs, that we will be proposing a 45-foot maximum height for buildings that have a hip roof. And that's just a function of how a hip roof is constructed. As I said, the 4-story buildings would not be included in the regulation amendments, and that would require a variance from your ZBA. The other thing I want to point out on this table is the impervious surface ratio. You'll recall from the Amazon application that the site is currently 85% impervious. The Amazon proposal that you approved was 82% impervious. We're proposing a ratio or a standard of 70%. And based upon our current calculations, we'd actually be at 66%. So we would be proposing 70, out of the gates, just out of caution in case any of the numbers should be changed in a slight degree. With regard to some of the things that Harry brought up in his staff memo, and we appreciate Harry's time in putting that together, he made a reference to reducing the uses to only multifamily, and we would be happy to have that discussion. I mean, some would be inappropriate, but we don't want to eliminate all those, and we can have a further discussion on that. We'd obviously want to have the opportunity for, adding retail, perhaps, small format retail in the future, or maybe small restaurants. Obviously, all that would require your approval, but we wouldn't want to eliminate all uses other than multifamily when we do our PDD application. Certainly, some might be appropriate, like the more true warehouse or industrial type of uses, but others we would want to retain. In addition, we would, as I noted before, we would be including a provision where we could treat the two parcels as one for setback requirements. It also helps us with our phasing. And then, not only a number of clients have been plagued by the 1 year limit on your special permit for earth excavation, and you've been giving, rightfully so, a number of extensions on that. So we would be proposing that the earth excavation 1 year limit be extended, because obviously we'd be doing work over a number of years through the two phases of the project. It would simply make it easier for you. We wouldn't have to be coming back to you for an extension of the special permit for earth excavation expiration. And I understand that you're already contemplating doing so for all applications, but perhaps this could be a little bit of a test case. And then the very last thing I want to discuss with you is, Harry mentioned, in the PDD regulations, there is a provision that says, if you want to do PDD, the commission should consider whether there's another zone that's appropriate. And this is a really important consideration, because that provision that Harry quotes in his staff memo is in the purpose section of the PDD regulation. So the language is, in my view, very flexible. It says, no other zone is appropriate, with no standard as to determine what is appropriate or not with regard to another zone. As I said, the fact that it's in the purpose section means it's not a specific prohibition, or you don't need to make a finding that no other zone will work. And it's our position that the IHOD zone is not appropriate for a couple of reasons. If you look at the description of the IHOD zone, it's really for areas of existing concentrated developments. I don't think that that applies to this site. There's a specific reference to accommodating mixed use, which this likely would not or cannot. And here's the most important reason, and then, by the way, I've had a longstanding, very cordial, respectful relationship with Harry, and on this matter, we reasonably disagree. He had indicated that he does not believe that the requirement of 20% affordable is a standard that is appropriate for you to determine that you couldn't do an IHOD zone. And I respectfully disagree, because I don't think there's any standard that's more important in terms of why the IHOD is not appropriate for this location. We've spent a long time describing, the site design, how we would want to extend the sidewalk and landscaping all the way down to Route 1, the highly amenitized buildings, the very attractive buildings, the very large clubhouse, the bicycle share, the solar panels, all those things militate against a 20% affordability requirement. In fact, if the commission in this PDD or in an IHOD required 20% of units to be affordable, you simply wouldn't have a project. And given our traffic issues on this site, and given the fact there are no more last mile facilities being constructed by Amazon, we are left with one use and one use only for this site, and that's multifamily community. And a multifamily community with 20% affordable simply cannot be constructed. And so that's why I said we wanted to have a very fulsome, candid, robust conversation with you, because we're putting our cards on the table. We're being very candid about what we can and cannot do. I think it's a very exciting opportunity for the town of Branford. It's an exciting opportunity for Howard and for Continental Properties. And so we want to we really want to hear from you on this issue and anything else you want to discuss, whether it's the density, the number of units, the height, the landscaping, even the pollinator pathway, where everything is on the table, and we really want to hear from the commission and their thoughts. So, Sarah, you can probably stop sharing, and so we can all see each other a little bit better. And Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to you.
Checking his chair. Thank you, Mr. Neff. Harry, do you want to, I know you made some comments, you want to share that, share your comments with the commission before we start reacting?
Sure. Harry Smith, Town Planner. I appreciate all the thinking that's gone into the proposal at this point in time. I think I'd like to take it back to the process just to ensure that the commission's clear on what's what this discussion is about in terms of how it's being done procedurally under the zoning regulations. And Chuck, I noticed you're frozen, so I'm just going to mention that.
Can you hear
Stop
me?
for a second. I can hear you now, but we can't see your screen moving, but that's fine. As long as you can interact with us, I think that probably is enough. First of all, as Attorney Nuff mentioned, this is a informal discussion that's provided for in the Plan Development District regulations. One thing I'd like to emphasize is it's non-binding, and that's mentioned right in that section of the regulations, so that this is a completely non-committal discussion in terms of whatever the applicant says. They not necessarily need to follow through with that. And the same thing on any comments that the commission or staff make about this. Also, the application turns whether it should go forward or not would become a zoning map amendment. That would be the first step to the Planning and Zoning Commission. That is a discretionary function. Essentially, you're acting in a quasi legislative capacity. It's not like an application for a special exception approval or a site plan approval. You have a much wider range of discretion, and you're statutorily required to consider what's called the comprehensive plan of zoning, which is, as far as I understand it, the history of the development of the area, as well as the history of how the zoning regulations have guided that development or been have changed and been in place over time. So I think those are two very important things to think about as you're going through this. Also, commission's required to at least consider the plan of conservation development. This area, and particularly these two properties, have never been envisioned in any of the plans I'm aware of for residential development. This has always been envisioned as a commercial / with the BL hybrid zoning, potentially with some industrial uses as the envision for this. That does not necessarily bind the commission, but that's something I think to consider as a backdrop to the proposal before you. With respect to the incentive housing zone, it is pretty typical for the commission to consider purpose statements when they're considering a zoning map amendment. So I think that's a valid consideration, and particularly in the context of that purpose statement being really part of the comprehensive plan of zoning in terms of its use in other parts of town and whether it's appropriate to be used here, could be used here for this project. Appreciate the comments made about the affordable housing requirement. That's sort of an ongoing, evolving discussion. There is also the backdrop of the recent adoption by the commission and the town of the affordable housing plan. So that has provided more information about the need for affordable housing and sort of highlighted that whole issue, I think. I'm not going to get really into specifics about the plan because I think that's really reserved comments about that for a later date, other than to note that I appreciate the comments about the desirability of pedestrian connectivity, particularly to the downtown and the train station. But I will note that, as everyone's probably aware, that the intersection on Route 1, Commercial Parkway and Route 1, as well as the exit ramp from I-95, is one of the busiest, if not the busiest intersection in town. Does have a pedestrian phase, but I don't see very many people trying to attempt to cross Route 1 from either the Montoya apartments to the Aldi's and back and forth. It's not set up. It doesn't really necessarily lend itself to easy pedestrian movement, shall we say. So I think that's a real challenge to accessing a lot of the features that have been noted so far in the presentation as being available and proximate to the property, just the sheer fact of how do you get around on the sidewalk system, which is not completely connected to all these things, is probably a lot more difficult than might be apparent from the presentation. So I think I'll stop there, and if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Chuck Anderson, Chair. Thank you, Harry. Okay, commission members, I guess we're being asked to give our impressions. I'm going to emphasize once again that this is all non-binding. What I don't want anyone to say is, you know, a year later, someone says, but you said, this is all non-binding. We have had no public comment, and something like this site, which is, I think it's been mentioned a number of times, the exit 53, it's gotten a lot of publicity. I would definitely want to hear what public feels about that. So anyway, that's sort of re-emphasizing. So does anyone want to start? I had a few thoughts. I'm happy to go first, but I'm happy to let anyone else go if they would like to.
Chuck, Fred Russo.
Fred, go ahead.
I have one thought. I'm just curious as far as time frame. The project we're told that it would take place, all things being equal, in 2 phases. I was just wondering, what is the time frame? You know, everything went right, was on schedule. What kind of time frame would it take to build those 2 phases?
The initial phase, I mean, if we were to go through the entire process that I laid out at the very beginning of the this process, PDD, special permit, site plan, inland wetlands, I think we can probably, you know, get through that process, you know, let's call it by the end of this year, early next year. And then Howard can, you know, we would need OSTA approval. That would take a couple of months. And then Howard can mobilize and get a building permit approved. And then, you know, I think Howard can let us know how many years it would take to build that first phase. I would imagine it's going to be at least a year or 2. But Howard, do you want to weigh in on what the process would be?
Thank you, John. Each phase would take about 2 to 3 years to both build and fully occupy, which means that from the time that we obtain all approvals and close to the time we start the second phase of 200 plus units would be about 3 years.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Fred. Well, I'll go ahead and give you some, you know, ad hoc thoughts. First, I guess the big issue is this is a big change, that it's always been commercial, industrial, non-residential, and it's a change to residential. As you know, as Harry mentioned, it's in any of the zoning regulations since 1956, in any of the plans of development, it's always been, you know, non-residential, commercial, industrial. So, I mean, and those are planning documents. So this is a change, which is one reason I'd want to hear from the public. I understand the reasons, and you can say, well, it hasn't been developed. You know, that shows you that maybe that shouldn't have been done. And I get the traffic stuff as a motivation because the residential is going to be less traffic. That said, I mean, I wish I wish I could flip a switch and someone at Amazon would change their mind, you know, because I think that would have been great. You know, still thinking of that. I still have that mentality of the site. So that's the issue. The use is this scenario. I guess number 2 is I would have, even if I think residential and multifamily residential, I would not have thought of this site in town as luxury apartments. I just would not have. I thought, no, I mean, it's got a Walmart. It's right by the Parkway, you know, it's got the exit and it's got this coming up. It's not far from 95. I just would not have, I wouldn't have seen that. And it still seems a little bit surprising to me. I mean, just is this site, because there's places in Branford where you'd say, oh, there's a good luxury spot there. So so that's I suppose a good thing, because you can say, hey, look, we are doing extra stuff that you wouldn't otherwise do. And I understand that, but it just seems a little unusual. I mean, I wouldn't have predicted that. And that sort of blends into another thing, which is, you know, like it or not, affordability stuff. I made the mistake today of reading the Fair Share Bill, HB 6633, which has made it out of committee and could be voted on. I mean, that thing is all about, 830G on steroids, and all about deed restricted housing, and all about, if you don't have it, anyone can bring a civil rights suit. Now we're not talking about just your project, but some damages stuff. I mean, there's some scary stuff in there. But anyway, there's a whole lot of emphasis on deed restricted housing. And if you had to ask me in Branford, because I can see, we're sensitive, particularly to the existing residents here, of where, if you want to have some, deed restricted housing where you have the least opposition in maybe appropriate area, I'd say, well, maybe this is it, because it's not like you're plopping it down in the middle of other residential areas where they have 1 and 2 families and whatever, and there's whatever. So, that would lessen the opposition, and the area is such. So, that in my mind is okay if we can develop it as a as a commercial industrial, and we had to put some multifamily residential, particularly at high densities. And this is high density, guys. This is 20 per acre. This is pretty high. Higher than what our multifamily zone is 6. I know we've approved some mixed use, and they've all been mixed use, affordable stuff would have, for some higher density things have done it. But for this site, I would definitely want to see more affordable. If we did, if we got to the, okay, let's look at multifamily. I think we need more. 5% doesn't move the ball, it loses the ball. And I would love 20%. Maybe that's a non-starter, but that's what I'd like. And I could justify that, in light of everything that's coming down from the state and what we're faced with. So and it's hard to envision that if we approve this project as a PDD, why anyone would ever use incentive housing at all, because they could just come in with a PDD and do the same thing at the same density and do less than that. It would just be, it does create a precedent, guys. I mean, it just does. That said, I understand that there was some nice features to it and there's some good things to it, but those are sort of my kind of reactions. So let's go on. Other folks want to give some comments.
Joe Vayuso. I have some real quick concerns. One about the sewer system, concerned about education, schools. This is not 55 and over. It's high density. We just talked about that a couple of meetings before that on another application. I think it was on Jefferson Road or something, about these PDDs coming in with these super high densities under a PDD format instead of. Then there's this traffic thing. You're saying low traffic. I don't believe it's low traffic all the time. I believe these are going to be a lot of working people there, and there's going to be a lot of traffic at the normal peak hours. This density thing, it really gets me. It got me with that 3 or 4 story building that they were asking for over there on Jefferson Road, and here they are doing it all over again. So, first thought in my mind is, and exactly what you said, Chuck, I think a little bit of high luxury. High luxury doesn't fit in my mind over there. So, that's just some thoughts that comes to mind real quick. I'm sure I got others, but I haven't got them all in my head right now. That'll be all. Thank you.
Hey, check in to share. Thanks, Joe. Other comments, thoughts by folks?
Oh, probably my most trivial comment is that the changing a roof geometry from a gable to a hip does not increase the height. I don't know where that fantasy came from, but it is just not true, and it's demonstrably true. So I would not rely on that as a rationale for anything, at least for making that excuse for a variance or anything like that. But I am completely sympathetic to the reading of the incongruity that occurred in the presentation. I mean, it was a very skillful sort of a sell. But the things like the amenities and the bikes and stuff like that are not necessarily the substance of zoning. It's the, how many people are coming into and going out of it, how big are the buildings, how do they sit on the site. I am not overwhelmed with the wonderfulness of it, and having another luxury compound in Branford, I don't think is going to do us any good as a town. And I recall very well people coming out with pitchforks and torches over Amazon because of the potential traffic. Residential, somebody comes in for work, somebody goes out for work. You've got people visiting. The traffic will be a serious problem. Whether it's a perceived problem or a functional problem or a non-problem, which is yet to be demonstrated, I don't know, but it will be perceived as a huge problem. The belief that this is going to somehow be a pedestrian, connection to anything, I think is also kind of an unfortunate fantasy, unless people are going to walk back and forth to Walmart, which is a fairly depressing walk. I have many concerns about this as being sort of oversold, and the hermetic nature of it has sort of compounded the illusion of it. And that's about where I'm at.
Chuck and say thanks, Joe. Marcy, you got any thoughts?
Sure. It would help me if you could share the site plan again on the screen. Just to echo a little bit of what Joe was saying, I think it's very interesting what the perceived, whether it's real or not, what the perceived notion of the traffic versus the actuality. I can certainly appreciate John's discussion that this is less intensive than the previously approved use. And so that, that gives me encouragement from the standpoint that, if something's going to go here, at least we're improving on the traffic. I'd really have to study the data about what's going in on the state and all that. Although I don't think it's, the most scenic of walkways along Commercial Parkway and along Route 1, I do often see people walking that way because there is bus service along Route 1 there, and there are people that need to take the bus, whether it is to go to Aldi's or what have you. And I think a project like this could potentially encourage the town to improve upon those pedestrian aspects along Route 1, which may come to be an important thing for the town to do, whether it's, a result of more demand from this project or not. But, I just got back from South Carolina, and what I found interesting, there was a lot of designed developments down there. There's a lot of historical landscape communities that were designed in Columbia, South Carolina. I'm sure, we all remember studying in school as landscape architects, and perhaps Joe as well. But, it may not seem like a luxury area around the development, but just if it becomes an internally focused complex and the complex is cohesive within itself, I can see how it could be interpreted as luxury. Yes, I realize it's sort of a non-obvious spot, but like I said, I was driving on these 4-lane roads in South Carolina, and then all these developments were sort of kicked off at different levels, and and everything was car driven, and this just sort of seems like another one of that. And it's definitely new to New England, but it's not necessarily a new concept in the US. Just little nitty gritty things. I was wondering, is there any way to connect, an exit or entrance from the Branford connector to alleviate some of the pressure at the light? Some of those parking, the main spine down the middle, the parking, the road looks like you could pick up some speed on there. I was sort of thinking about some traffic calming elements there. I like how the buildings are positioned. I think it's a very interesting, well laid out project for what it is, whether it's in the right location or not. I think we're going to be debating about that. I love the amenities. I love the language about that. I love all the walkways. I do think that there's a lot of greenery and good spacing between the buildings. It could be a lot tighter. And I think I would, if you're going to come forward, I'd really like to see a comparison of, this PUD as opposed to what we approved over at exit 55 and that's density. So we can get sort of a rational appeal of what the massing feels like and the distance feels like, and if there's some similarities to that, that's what I would be kind of looking at. The pollinator pathways, great. The variety of plantings, great. Those are all important things. They're all coming. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I'd like to have a better understanding of the mixes. I noticed there were a lot of one bedrooms, a lot of to me, as I'm thinking about the impact on the school systems, is this really being designed for families, or is it more focused on young adults? And if older adults are part of the mix, it seems like only 2 of the buildings have elevators. Could more of the buildings have elevators? Could some of the parking be put under the building if the grade changes to alleviate some of the surface parking? Just sort of design ideas I was considering. But I do like, what they're doing with the garage bays and separating, sort of insulating it from Commercial Parkway. I think that has good instinct. I do like the photos of the amenities that were shown. I noticed some of them were definitely contrived, and I don't know if that's what the actual architecture would look here. And I noticed some of them were real, so I assume that there are projects of that caliber that exist. So we definitely, I think, have models that we can look to compare if you come forward with this. But those were my first instincts. So I think it's a very good first brush stroke at it for sure.
Chuck and Chair. Thanks, Marcy. Further comments by anyone?
Sure, I'll make a comment. It's Massimo.
Sure.
Massimo.
Yeah.
So I think aesthetically, it's very pleasurable to the eye. I mean, the visual change that it would make is definitely on a positive. I think the concerns, like Joe Vaiuzzo said, he mentioned something about the education. Like you had mentioned, Chuck, you mentioned something about, the lower income issues that the town will have. And I was just wondering if that becomes an issue where a project that's this pretty, can kind of will go out the window because of the certain situations that the town has to face because of education, because of low income. If adjustments possibly can be considered, maybe eliminate the 3 bedrooms and maybe do, keep the height a little bit lower, make them 2 bedrooms, and maybe you don't need as much space. Not sure if that's considerable or possibly, I don't know if it helps the town to do, a 50-50 split on a 10% fee in lieu of and 10% low income. And sort of, it's just an idea I'm throwing out there that might alleviate some of the pressures if the town and the project here could sort of. I like that it's going to just pretty up the area. You know, to me, it's a lot prettier than the Amazon building. But yet, you know, definitely the traffic control I think is an issue, and what Marcy said about you know, having an exit or an on ramp and an exit ramp coming from that back area. I mean, that would be, you know, that would solve a lot of that traffic issue. I just want to throw my 2 cents in there and sort of mention those things, and maybe that could be brought up in some considerations for both parties. Thank you.
Chuck and Chair. Thank you, Massimo.
Can I make another comment?
Yeah,
Marcy?
absolutely.
So, yeah, I would be really curious to know what rental rates they were thinking for the 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms, and if they were to apply affordable housing, if they could just show us the scenario of based on the town's index, you know, what the various percent rates would be, so we could compare them to, you know, what our current market rates are, because, you know, the rental rates for a 1 bedroom affordable, you know, really may not be a big deal at all if it's at a 10%, you know, and I think that discussion and how that's done may allow for more units to be put here and hopefully not affect their bottom line. I understand that they've got cost considerations, especially with, you know, things like clubhouses and pools and all that. Those aren't cheap to do. And if they do them well, you know, I assume that's going to have to come and be represented in the rental rates. So I'd like to understand that aspect, because if they're 1 bedroom apartments, chances are they're not going to have children in those apartments. If they're 2 bedrooms, yes. You know, then you're going to be looking at, you know, maybe divorced families, you know, single parent type situations. And, you know, then there could be an impact on, you know, the school system. But with 400 some odd units, if a certain percent have children, that's not a huge increase to the school demographic, and school demographics are decreasing anyway. So, you know, to me, I've heard from just citizens the need for more ranch style units that people can use as they age in place, and if they're affordable, and if they can, you know, they can get it. That, like, I know of people who have moved out of traditional apartments and gone to buildings with elevators because of knee issues and so forth and so on. And, you know, I think that's a really big demographic in here. So I'm just really curious, with that many units, what they see as the controlling demographic and the costing for that, you know, as well as I had said before, the numbers with the traffic. Because if it's an older demographic, you're going to have a different traffic pattern than if you have a working demographic. So hopefully that adds to what I said previously.
Chuck and Chair. Thank you, Marcy. Other comments from commission members?
Chuck, Fred Russo.
Fred.
I thought a very positive comment I heard from the commentary from the potential applicant is the fact that they hold on to their properties. They don't come in, build them, and then sell them, and they turn it into something different. I would be very interested to see if they could, the next time they come before us, if they choose to do so, see what their properties look like. I saw the few that they showed, and they look pretty nice, but I would like to see what they have built. The fact that they keep what they build, I think, is a plus. Now, I don't know about how many stories they should be or how many numbers of people there, but I think the most basic thing that I see is that they don't come and build them and then abandon them, and someone else is stuck with the problem. If they have that kind of a track record, then I think I would listen more carefully as to what they want proposed, and hopefully there's a common ground we will all find. But I think when you have a developer who builds a high-end product and then stays with it, because it costs money to stay with it. You make less money because, you know, you're kind of catering. You just didn't slam bam, thank you, ma'am, kind of a job. So I would be interested to see more of what they have already done, because that's already in place. You know, we could talk about artist conceptions, everything else, but I'd like to see what it is that they built. The 2 or 3 projects they mentioned, there's 3 of them, that what they look like. To get some photos of those, and I would be interested in how long they've owned them. You know, they say we stay in the game. You stay in the game for a year or 2, and then you're out, or you stay in the game for 10 years. So I think those things, those very, very basic elements, would make me decide one way or another if this is to go forward. That's my opinion.
Chuck in his chair. Thanks, Fred. Any other comments from anyone? Mr. Nuff, well, we tried to give you our guess what you asked for, right?
No. I was going to say, you might be wondering whether I regret asking you for a wholesome discussion, and candidly, no. I mean, because these are important considerations, and it's better for us to hear all these things now rather than, after we, spend a lot of time and frankly money trying to put together applications and do plans and all that. But I do want to respond to, some of what was said, not in an argumentative way, but just provide a different perspective. I think that's important because, these informal meetings, the word charrette is overused, but, this is supposed to be collaborative. And so let's talk about some of the things. And I think what Commissioner Russo says is very important. And, we spent a lot of time at the very beginning. In fact, Howard spoke to you, I think, from the heart about his experience. And I thought it was important for the commission. And well, it's very unusual for a lawyer to ask his client to speak. I thought it was really important in this case because of Howard's and Continental's experience and their reputation in other communities. And I would tell you, I represented Howard in other locations, and he has a wonderful, impeccable reputation in every community where he builds a community. And I think that's important. I know that's not a zoning consideration. It's not in your regs. It won't be in the PDD, but it does play an important role. And there are and many towns actually want to know who is the developer. We want to know who this person is going to be, who's going to become essentially an important citizen in our town. And that's why I thought it was important for you to meet Howard and learn a little bit more about Continental. Sort of going from there, it's interesting that those of us who, live with a property, go by it many, many times, we don't really see the opportunity. Howard and his colleagues and his partners, they have a vision. They have taken other locations that others might pass by and just say, well, why in the world would you put X there? Well, the fact is he's done it many times, and other multifamily developers have done it as well. And it does take a different perspective, but also you need to know that they're on the front lines of meeting with their residents and finding out who these people are. Commissioner Paluzzi mentioned, so who's going to be living here? And I think in all the cases that, we've seen with multifamily, there is a wide breadth of new residents. It can be young people who are just starting out their lives together. It could be the suddenly single. It could be, whether by being widowed or by divorce. You could have kids, moving in who are already in the Branford school system, but if there's a situation of divorce, they're just simply changing their location. So, and I think the data would support that you're not going to have an overabundance of school-aged children. You're going to have some kids moving in, of course, but some of them are going to be already in your school system. But the vast majority of multifamily communities do not generate school-aged children in the manner that we all might suspect that they do. A couple of other things. And by the way, in terms of the population, it does provide an important other opportunity for people who choose to downsize and stay and want to stay in the Branford community, whether by reason of their friends or their churches or any other affiliations they want that they want to maintain. So delving into the more specific, you know what? I'm in an unusual location, and can you hear any background? All right, I want to close the door for a second.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, while John is getting up, hey John, I just want to add to one point that you made. So the two things. One is back probably a dozen years ago, we had less data to rely on when it relates to school-age children in these types of developments. But there was this one really good study called the Rutgers study that truly identified really what the mix of school-age kids in these units are. And to put in perspective, these units, the 436 units, we're talking about 10% or less being 3 bedrooms. So to put it in perspective, we're not saying that half of our units would be 3 bedrooms. We're talking about 44 units at the most would be 3 bedrooms. So it's important to understand, but in addition, we personally have been involved in projects with Howard as well as other developers, and some that are very sizable. The Sound is a project between exit 74 and 73 along 95 in East Lyme. You see it into the woods if you're traveling southbound on 95. That is a development that has been built in phases, much like Howard talked about. And if you went to that facility and actually looked at the number of school-aged children, it would actually be less than the study that we had projected. We did an analysis of that. So I don't think school-aged children are going to be a big problem. But I want to say, in addition, I love this town. I just built a very nice house in this town. This is my 3rd home that I've lived in and built in this town or bought in this town. But let's face it, our town has a lot of aged rental properties, and this town needs new rental properties, quite frankly, by people that want to own their property, want to maintain their property, like Mr. Smith, who also lives in town and cares about this town. This is the kind of development we want. As it relates to a pedestrian connection down to Route 1, I mean, I live in this town, Harry, let me tell you, there is no sidewalks, there is no lighting, there is no striping, there is no signs, and it's a death call to even walk down to Route 1 without a sidewalk. And the linkage to downtown is only missing a short section of sidewalk in front of, from where you guys approved the new gas station convenience store to the front of Aldi's. So I agree a project can be proposed to make that linkage. So I believe that the linkage would be there for pedestrians, but you have to make it safe. You have to make it inviting. And I think we could do that. And then lastly, in terms of the traffic, all I'll tell you is, we're going to do a detailed traffic analysis. We have done the existing counts. The state has agreed to adopting those existing background counts. The first step would be, because it's a state road, they have to approve our traffic volumes. We use, land use codes from ITE. We come up with this data, and it post-COVID, guys, not a lot of people are getting in their car in the morning, all at the same time, and or even leaving to go to work. A lot of folks are working from home. So I don't think that there's going to be a concern on traffic. And to Chuck's point about last mile facility, Chuck, it was a big hit to my business because we were getting those projects approved across the state. And let me tell you, Branford's at least in as good a shape as, say, Waterbury, that we got approved at the same time, because those facilities at least didn't get half built and then shut down, or worse than that, like in Plainfield, rather, a facility is completely built and mothballed. So what good is that? Because now no one's maintaining that facility and it's not providing the jobs. So I think, guys, the Shaperos have had this property available and on the market post the handicap of not be able to do anything here because of the Amtrak bridge for now at least 12 years. And only a few potential users could go here because of the traffic situation. And as I said earlier, we can demonstrate by plan that any future improvements that have to be made at this location when funds are available by a transportation project will not be impeded. In fact, we would be giving up a small portion of the south edge of our property to allow and facilitate the new ramp being relocated and eliminating the one intersection on Route 1. So just a couple points, but we didn't give you all the data, and Joe and Chuck and Marcy, all of you guys have made good points, and we need to understand those concerns so that when we come back with reports and with data, it's targeting some of the things that you guys think you need to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mancini. Mr. Nuff, you want to finish up?
Yeah, thanks, John, for jumping in. You know, I know we got, there's a question about sewer from Commissioner Vayuso. You know, we have talked to John Hofferly, and we believe that we'll be okay with regard to sewers. We talked about education. Traffic, I know that Commissioner Chadwick mentioned the opposition on traffic with regard to Amazon. That was primarily related to potential truck traffic coming from Tweed Airport, coming to our site. Certainly that's not going to be the case here. I think John has done an eloquent job of describing why the traffic won't be an issue, and virtually any other use of this property would be. You know, particularly helpful was his comparison to a Starbucks being greater than or equal to the proposed traffic from the community that we're discussing. You know, I guess the point is, you know, Mr. Chairman, you had mentioned that, you know, if you approve PDBs in place of incentive housing, why would anyone do incentive housing? And I think the issue is, the answer to that is, no one's doing incentive housing now, because it just doesn't work at a 20% affordability requirements. That's not to say that, you know, you should pass up an opportunity for a community such as this. You know, one of the other things that we've all experienced as multifamily becomes more prevalent in whatever community you live in is all the good things that come with that. You know, you now have a host of new residents to frequent shops, to frequent restaurants, create some vitality in your town. And so with virtually no downside, no traffic, there's still huge income to the town in terms of tax revenue, whether it's from property taxes, from vehicle taxes, as we discussed with Amazon even. So, you know, we don't want to just, you know, run from, you know, this opportunity. You know, I think we want to continue the dialogue. You know, if there's more information that's, you know, the commission would want specifically, you know, we'd be happy to provide that. But, you know, this is, you know, as I said at the very beginning, this is a very important opportunity for my client. We think it's a really wonderful opportunity for the town. And we are grateful for the opportunity to have this discussion with you. And we're hopeful that, you know, over the course of, you know, maybe a few days, as it sort of sinks in a little bit, you know, we can have, you know, gain a little bit of traction. You see the opportunities that are there. You know, because this, as I said at the very beginning, this is an unusual change of pace from a last mile facility to multifamily. Clearly, you know, some of you were, you know, surprised by that. But not only is it the, you know, only option for this property, but it's really the best option for this property, and we think it's the best option for the town.
Chuck, thank you, Mr. Nuff, and thank your team. We appreciate hearing about this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have a couple of other items on the agenda that we need to go through. The next one is item number 2 under other business. There's an 824 land donation. Harry, do you want to review that with us?
Sure. Harry Smith, Town Planner. We have a request from the First Selectman, a referral, in fact, for an 824 review of the potential donation of a piece of property. And I will share my screen and show you the location of that land. So let me scroll down the map here. This is the young parcel owned by the town with the pond and the dog park up here. There's a trail system through here as well. And I believe there's a bridge that crosses between the wetland and which is partly water, I believe, on the north side, and a large pond in the south of the bridge. In yellow is this parcel that's being offered by, I believe, Janet Ryan, as a just no strings attached donation. It's landlocked. It's undeveloped. There is, I think, wetland on this part of it. This is this water course here and here. It's a little bit of dry land in it, forested at this point. So it would augment the open space here that's already preserved by the town and used for recreation purposes as well.
Chuck and Chair, thanks, Harry. I think that would be a great addition to the existing open space around Young's Pond. I know there's a little dog park, there's a trail back there, and it's across the street is the shoreline trail, whatever. It kind of bleeds out on the other side, I think is what part of that is. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The shoreline trail goes through there. There's the existing paved part of that through the Tabor property, exits and falls into a sort of a cinder path that comes down to Birch, that you can cross Birch and come into this Young's Pond property that this would be added to. Yep.
So, okay, so I guess we're looking for a positive 824 report with respect to this, that the donation of this land to the town, we find it consistent with the plan of conservation development, and give a positive report, right? How do we frame this?
Exactly. Yeah. Someone can make a motion to send a positive report back to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay. Someone want to make a motion to make a positive 824 report with respect to this land donation?
So move, Chadwick.
We'll give the motion to Joe Chadwick, and I don't know who made the second.
I think Joe Ayuso did.
Okay, Joe Ayuso gets the second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Joe Chadwick?
Joe Chadwick is in favor.
Fred Russo?
Fred Russo's in favor.
Joe Ayuso?
Joe Ayuso in favor.
Marcy?
Marcy's in favor.
And Chair is also in favor. There's a planner's report.
Given the late hour, the only thing I'd like to note is that I believe Mr. Russo attended affordable housing workshop, and is going to keep bringing up opportunities for commissioners completing their education requirements, and there are 4 hours required by the end of the calendar year, one of which has to be on affordable housing. So I'll keep presenting this to you, and we'll try to develop a matrix so we can try to keep track of what people have done, and so you can know what you've done if you lose track of it. And hopefully we all get there by the end of the year. So is there anything else you want to add, Evan?
No, nothing for me.
Okay. And
Harry,
yep.
Fred Russo, I just wanted to note that the webinar that I attended, by Zoom, I was pleasantly surprised to find that our chairman was one of the panelists. So Chuck was one of the three panelists on that program, and it was I actually thought it was pretty interesting. So hats off to those guys that gave up their time to do that. But I was surprised to see, I was pleasantly surprised to see Chuck there.
Thanks,
and I think that the program actually was recorded and will be available, so that if any other commissioners that couldn't be there when it was live streamed, if you will, could view it afterwards. So I'll get that information together and out to folks too.
Great.
And Fred, it's great to have you back, and glad you are.
I'm glad to be back. I love the action.
Are you good? Are you good, Fred? I mean, I
am. I had my gallbladder removed, but I'm more gentle now.
It's all it took. Great.
No more Popeyes.
Excellent. Anything else, Harry?
No, all set. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have anything? If not, then someone make a motion to adjourn.
Fred Russo, with pleasure. I make a motion we adjourn.
Motion made by Fred. Is there a second?
Chadwick seconds.
Chadwick second.
Somebody.
Everybody have a great night.
That's right. Okay. All those in favor, Joe Chadwick,
Chadwick in favor.
Fred Russo,
In favor.
Joe Vayuso,
So in favor.
Marcy,
Myers is in favor.
and Chair is also in favor of adjourning. So thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good night,
Good
everybody.
night.
And good night.
Good night.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.